The Queen is buried in Windsor, surrounded by her family after a funeral ceremony unparalleled in living memory.
Good morning. It is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 20th of September. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Thank you very much indeed for your company, whether you're watching us, whether you're listening to us, whether you're there on the app or on DAB Plus radio. Leading the news this morning.
The Queen has been laid to rest next to her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, at St George's Chapel in Windsor, in a private ceremony surrounded by her family.
It followed a grand funeral ceremony at Westminster Abbey and a military parade through London commemorating her life and service, bringing an end to the Elizabethan age.
In other news, Prime Minister Liz Truss has flown to New York for the United Nations General Assembly, where she'll make Ukraine the focus of her maiden speech to the assembled world leaders. She'll also hold talks with President Biden during her time there.
6 million people will today receive a £150 disability cost of living payment. That payment will be made automatically. It is intended to offset the high cost of care and transport faced by people with disabilities. Now, first question is that enough, really, £150? It's never enough, really. Is it insulting? What would you need more if you're disabled? What would you need more money for?
Yes.
Maybe a bit of a silly
We've got
question.
the mini budget coming up on Friday. What are you hoping to see from that? And your reflections, of course, on that historic day.
Well, it was
Get
an
in
amazing
touch.
day.
It was amazing. It was very emotional.
Well, you see,
Beautiful.
you went out. You went out and you caught the hearse on the route to Windsor.
I did. So we obviously covered the build-up for 4 hours at Buckingham Palace in the morning. I went home, watched the funeral, and then we hopped on our bicycles and we were lucky enough to catch a bit of the cortege heading out of London. Absolutely incredible to show my children that and to be part of it as a citizen as opposed to being a broadcaster, which has also been a huge privilege, but to be able to do both was magical yesterday, actually.
And today, are you a post office worker?
And British Airways.
It could be. It's just my brother's a postman and he has an outfit. It's a bit like this.
But do you know what it is? We're allowed to wear colour today, and
Yes.
I thought, OK...
Not too much.
Not too much. I'm going to ease myself
Yeah.
back in out of respect, because there's a lot still of coverage of the funeral.
No, I didn't say it wasn't nice. I mean, you could make anything look nice. I'm just saying.
Oh, there you go.
It's very utilitarian, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's
yeah.
very...
Well,
like,
you know.
sort of like communist.
I wouldn't dream of making a personal
You just looked at my tie there, looking to make a smart remark, didn't you?
I did,
You thought...
And I thought I wouldn't dream of doing such a thing.
Dream of it. Dream of it. You know what to do. Get in touch. Join the conversation. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News. The Queen has now been laid to rest alongside her husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. It was a private service inside St George's Chapel in Windsor.
Well, GB News' Cameron Walker looks back at the historic state funeral for the Queen yesterday.
An event planned for decades, but military precision all came down to this moment. A final farewell to a queen who reigned over us for more than 70 years. Her Majesty's coffin was taken in procession from Westminster Hall, where thousands had filed past to pay their respects, in the State gun carriage of the Royal Navy, pulled by 142 Royal Naval ratings. A tradition dating back to the time of Queen Victoria. At the King's request, the wreath on top of the coffin contained flowers from the gardens of Buckingham Palace, Clarence House and Highgrove, rosemary for remembrance, and myrtle, the ancient symbol of a happy marriage, used in the Queen's own wedding bouquet in 1947. A handwritten note from the King read, "In loving and devoted memory," signed Charles R. A life of service was accompanied by a life in the public eye. Members of the royal family, their dignity and stoicism shone through in the face of unimaginable grief. Princess Charlotte's choice of brooch in the shape of a horseshoe was gifted by her great-grandmother, the Queen. She, alongside her future king brother George, processed behind the coffin with their parents, the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Her late Majesty famously declared on a 21st birthday broadcast that her whole life would be dedicated to serving the nation and Commonwealth. Rarely has such a promise been so well kept.
The Queen was consulted on all of the funeral plans. The hymn you're hearing was played at the Queen's wedding to Prince Philip in 1947. Mounties of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police led the procession from Westminster Abbey to Wellington Arch. Crowds shared in the King's grief, witnessing him and members of his family march behind his mother's coffin. A state hearse brought the Queen's coffin for the committal service at Windsor Castle. More than 800 people, including the Queen's personal staff, filled St George's Chapel. In stark contrast to Prince Philip's funeral, where just 30 people could attend because of COVID restrictions. The imperial state crown, the orb and the sceptre were removed from the coffin and placed on the high altar. The King then placed the Queen's camp colour of the Grenadier Guards on the coffin. The wand broken, creating the symmetry with the three instruments of state being removed, ready to be passed on to their successor.
But the merciful goodness of the Lord endureth for ever and ever upon them that fear him.
The Queen was buried with her late husband Prince Philip in a private service. Royal mourning continues, grieving together as a family. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Well, let's speak to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who joins us from Windsor this morning. Good morning to you, Paul. So many reflections of that incredible service at the Abbey yesterday, and also then the committal service in Windsor, behind where you are now. And I think it was seeing the sceptre, the orb, the crown removed from the coffin and the rod of power being broken in two, really a symbol of the end of the Elizabethan reign.
Yeah, absolutely. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, frankly, when you saw that. And indeed, when that happened, and when the camp colour, which indicates where the commanding officer rests, when that was placed on the coffin by Charles and he went to take his place, and there was that lament from the sovereign piper, you saw Charles really welling up, really tearful, and it was really... He just felt, you could see that it was really getting to him then, and that kind of stiff British upper lip, the British resolve that we're so famed for, kind of breaking, and you saw a little bit of Charles kind of just really thinking about his mother. And indeed, that's what a lot of the private service in the evening was about, where the cameras weren't there, the lights weren't there. And really the family got to think about their great-grandmother, their grandmother, their mama, as opposed to the Queen. So a very private service, a memorial service last night, where the Queen was...
Oh, what happened there? We were having a lovely little conversation with Tessie Ojo here, who's beside me, and she is from the... Paul, we had your chance, missed it, Paul. Sorry, we've moved on.
Sorry, Paul.
We'll come back. Well, actually, he's there and I'm worried about him. He's freezing. We feel sorry for him.
Yes, Paul, do continue. So sorry.
That's OK. No, I was just saying, during that memorial service last night, Prince Philip, his body was moved to be laid to rest with the Queen, and also her parents and her sister as well. And she was back together again with the man who she called her strength and stay.
It wasn't worth coming back to you for. You were very brief there. Thank you very much indeed. We'll speak later. We'll put money in the meter and all will be fine next time round. Thank you very much indeed. Paul. Mr. Paul Hawkins there, live from Windsor. If you're in Windsor today, you know you're living there, maybe you stayed over or whatever, let us know what all of that felt like, the whole experience yesterday.
Something very beautiful about Prince Philip being reunited with the Queen, the pair of them, and indeed alongside her father, King George VI, her mother, the Queen Mother, and her sister, Princess Margaret, all of them together.
My mother,
that's really comforting.
My mother's not afraid of death because she is just wishing to be reunited with my dad.
You see, I think that's so lovely.
Yeah.
And of course, for Christians, like Her Majesty the Queen, it's eternal salvation.
On that very point, Tessie Ojo is the top woman. She's the boss woman of the Diana Award, and she's met the Queen a number of
Royals.
times. And Isabel raised a very interesting point there. She talked about the Queen's faith, the Queen's religion, head of the Church of England. Do you think, from your experience, you've met her a number of times, you've received a CBE from the palace, and it was Prince William, but do you think her religious beliefs shone through in what she did?
Oh, absolutely. I loved something that the Archbishop said yesterday. He said that the Queen pledged her allegiance to God first. And from that came her service. And I think there's something incredibly profound about just serving, like when you understand, like for me, that I love what I do, and some of that comes from my own faith. And I could see all of that over this last 10 days, just listening to actually the Queen's faith and how her faith really shaped her service, and that her commitment to understand that we just serve, and we don't serve because you want a reward, you just do it. And from doing it, other things are added to you. And I loved every bit of the service yesterday, right from Westminster Abbey to Windsor.
Well, that is a great thing, and you'd like to think that's contagious, and people want to do that. And I think there are people in public life who want to serve. I'm sure you want to serve, and I think even if you didn't, you'd be inspired to serve now after what you saw with the Queen. But Isabel, you were very, very impressed with the Archbishop of Canterbury on that theme and how he lauded the Queen.
Yeah, well, he just made the most incredible, what's the correct terminology? I want to say eulogy, but it wasn't really. It was a sort of sermon during the funeral yesterday. And I'll just read the quote. He said, "People of loving service are rare in any walk of life. Leaders of loving service are still rarer, but in all cases, those who serve will be loved and remembered when those who cling to power and privileges are forgotten." And I think when you've got the world's leaders assembled, that is a powerful message.
I literally, when I heard that statement, I was going, yes.
Goosebumps.
Literally, because we also live in a society where people do not often think about service. We often think about power and privilege, and actually
getting to the top.
Right, and actually, privilege, when you have privilege, you need to think about your responsibility. With every privilege comes responsibility. And we've lost that sense of service as a community. This is, for me, at the Diana Award, one of the things that we try to do with young people is teaching them to serve, thinking about selfless service. Because, listen, everyone thinks when you serve, you're just giving. You get so much in return. There is a lot that comes, that personal satisfaction, something we all experienced during COVID, right? Just that checking in on your neighbour, that feel-good factor, that I'm actually doing something, but I also get something in return, the feel-good factor. And I think we've lost that across society.
When you work with these young people, how receptive are they to that? Because, young people get, pretty bad press by and large. And I know there's some that will be very privileged and very arrogant and very materialistic and whatever, but
I promise you, I have seen, and my personal belief is that this generation of young people are more service-minded than previous generations.
Really?
It's so good to hear you say that.
I tell you, because I see young people from the age of 9, 10, 11 doing things that I think, what did I do at that age? Young people who understand the inequalities in the world, young people who understand, when I talk about inequalities, I mean right from the effect on people, the effect on climate, the effect on societies. Young people who see stuff that needs to be done and think, actually, I'm not going to wait for some leader or governments to do it. I'm just going to work towards fixing it. And that makes me, that's one of the things that we know at the Diana was that young people today are so...
Do you know where I thought I saw service particularly? The pallbearers yesterday.
Oh, my goodness.
Those young lads. If I hear another person saying, because they believed if that was their son, they just were, please don't drop this, please don't make a mistake. And they were so proud.
Faultless.
They looked at these young men who probably hadn't seen active service yet in the theatre of war.
That
Maybe they had.
That brought a tear to my
Yes.
have to say. And it's just such a human thing, isn't it? You know, men carrying a coffin, and they did it beautifully.
Yeah,
and all the armed forces and the police who were there to serve. I think it takes a special type of person, and it's good to hear from you that person still exists. So
they
So
do.
good.
Absolutely, they do.
Now, let me ask you this. You're no stranger to royalty, you're no stranger to big occasions. Did you get emotional yesterday?
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. There were so many moments. So at the church, during the church service, once the national anthem went, I thought, wow, that got me, because I realised for the first time, that was the last time.
Yeah, it would be played.
It will be played, and she's at where she is. And I thought, whoa, that's the end. I've never said the king, you know, obviously we have in the last 10 days, but it's an anthem. I'm 51, I've grown up only hearing God Save the Queen, and knowing that was the final time it was going to be said, that really got me. And I think the next time was at Windsor, when the scepter was removed, everything, it was that's it. You come into this world empty-handed, and you will leave empty.
Yeah.
And it's that finality of it, that her work is done. And it's the fact that everyone, your work will be done at one point. And actually, what is your work? What is the credit of your work? That, again, that got me, knowing that that's it. Everyone has to go through that, and it's done. When it's done, it's done. And sometimes we leave. I know in our society we leave like we own tomorrow, but actually we don't.
We don't. Of course we don't.
And just a final thought on that point, the King George VI memorial chapel, where she was buried yesterday, I believe her father's tombstone just simply says the name George VI. And the same with her mother, it just says her name and her sister Margaret. And I think the simplicity of that, and it's likely that it will say the same on hers. Just Elizabeth. You know, as you say, you come into the world a humble human being. You live as a monarch, but in the eyes of God, you go...
That's it. There's just something really that we ought to just remember, like, no matter the battles that we face, no matter everything else, we are still going to live one day, and just do your bit, like, when you can.
Do your bit when you can.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know, you say that's the end of the Elizabethan period. Do you know what the new period's called?
Yes, I did, and I've forgotten. I want to say the go on. Forgotten.
Do you know what it's called?
No.
It's not the Charlesensian. No.
I'm sure someone will.
No,
say
there is a new term.
No, it's called the Caroline.
Carolean, yes.
Oh, wow.
Carolean era, which is very strange.
Well, it's because Carolean is the Latin for Charles,
There you go.
and that's why.
Carolean. What will it be for William as a test?
The Billy period. Yeah.
I don't see that. It doesn't have a ring to it. But we need to look that up. We'll get back to you on that. Billy era.
Tessie, I don't want this to be the end of your era. I want you to come back and review our newspapers one morning for us.
I would love that. I would absolutely
love it just to be here with me?
Oh, 100%, Eamonn.
Well, you can sit on this side. It's been lovely talking to you.
So
inspirational.
Yeah, that's
so
the
inspirational. You light up
thank
the
you.
screen.
You
Thank
do.
you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Not at all. Thank you. Anytime. We're going to see more of you. Thank you. That's Tessie Ojo, CBE. Have you got any honours yourself?
No, Eamonn, but you have, haven't you?
Look, I don't like to talk about. I don't like to talk.
That was
about
when
it.
Her Majesty the Queen pushed you virtually out of the palace. Go on, relay this story.
No,
it's a good one, please. It's a good one. I'll tell the story then.
You're allowed a minute and a half with her when she gives you your honour, and she holds on to your hand. You'll know this. You know this. She holds on to your hand, and then when she's finished with you. I'll hold on to you. Oh, there. She's finished with you. She will push your hand back, and you're allowed 90 seconds with her.
That's because Eamonn was punting for an interview.
Mine lasted 20. Mine lasted 20. She laughed and she just went, and she just pushed me like that. 20 seconds, it was all over.
Oh, that's because you said you'd interviewed every member of the royal family bar her, but we could change that today. She wasn't having any of it.
She wasn't having any.
Off with his head.
Yeah. The eyes of the world fixated on our country yesterday as billions of people watched the funeral. It was, for Queen Elizabeth, she was the country's longest reigning monarch. It was amazing. It was a day in history.
It really was. And it wasn't just a day for the capital, London, or indeed for Windsor, but it was watched in parks, in pubs, up and down the country. And our reporter, Will Hollis, has more.
A queen whose coronation was watched on tiny television sets, now her funeral seen on cinema-sized screens. Billions around the world were undoubtedly watching the Queen's final journey. Here in Britain's regions, close-knit communities pay their respects. At the Dog and Parrot, a pub in Eastwood in Nottinghamshire, ties to the armed forces are strong. Mark served the Queen as a Royal Engineer in Germany and Afghanistan. Watching her funeral is his final duty.
When I first joined the army, it was the Queen. We've always known the Queen being in charge, commander of all the armed forces, and now she's gone. It's quite a sad day.
Alongside veterans, royalists who can recall much of Elizabeth's reign make room for this new memory.
We've had the opportunity to remember, to celebrate, and really come together to remember that, you know, what's been a wonderful, wonderful Queen, and the time that she's spent with us has been marvellous, and she's galvanised the country.
From the Midlands to Manchester, public squares and spaces across the country, like here at Cathedral Gardens, open for the occasion.
It's like your grandmother's died. My father passed a couple of years ago, and it just brings back all the memories. So yes, I feel sorry for the royal family.
If I have time, I go London, but I don't have time. That's why I coming here to watch the last segment.
We were saying how nice it was that there isn't really a sense of community that much these days, so it was nice.
Yeah, it's nice everyone came together to pay their respects.
In Northern Ireland, the royal residence at Hillsborough Castle has been a focal point for the mourning of the country's late Queen. And at the Presbyterian Church in Royal Hillsborough, young and old here for this moment in history.
I thought that was just wonderful, and I thought the people were great watching.
It's the end of the era, but I think it's the start of a new, more modern era. We appreciate what the Queen has done. She's gone. Prince Charles, King Charles III will do well.
Back in Nottinghamshire, sombre silence is swapped out for a public house hum. With the passing of Elizabeth II, some things are to change. Tradition, however, lives on, connecting the country.
This is true Britain. This is true Britain. Getting together like we always do when something like this happens.
Will Hollis for GB News across the regions.
The time is 22 minutes past 6 to bring you up to date news-wise. This is what's happening.
The Prime Minister says negotiations for a post-Brexit free trade deal with the US will not restart for years. Liz Truss made the admission as she flew to New York to speak at the United Nations General Assembly ahead of a meeting with the US President Joe Biden.
The new Justice Secretary is set to meet with striking barristers for the first time since they walked out over pay. Brandon Lewis will sit down with the Criminal Bar Association today, something his predecessor, Dominic Raab, had refused to do.
The European Court of Human Rights will rule later on today whether the parents of Madeleine McCann were wronged by the Portuguese court system. Kate and Jerry McCann say they were unable to get a fair hearing against a former police detective who alleged they were involved in their daughter's disappearance in 2007.
Well, there continues to be memorials about the Queen, and here's another new picture released by Buckingham Palace, which we'll have a look at here.
This was her in Balmoral in 1971. And we thought yesterday, didn't we, when we were talking about the new picture released by the Palace of her at the Platinum Jubilee, it'd be the last time we'd see a new picture of her. But I think this is just the perfect picture to sum up Her Majesty. Of course, she died in Balmoral, but that was where she was happiest. And they quoted Hamlet in the way that the King quoted as well, saying, oh, I've lost the quote now, may a chorus of, what's the famous phrase? May a chorus of angels, I can't find, oh yeah, may flights of angels sing thee to thy rest, which I've
and that reminded you of seeing that picture reminded you of that?
Well, no, that's what the King put on the tribute yesterday. Yeah.
Well, with that picture?
Yes, yeah.
I think it's a very ordinary picture. Think of all the pictures you could have. I think they should have cropped it a bit. I think they should have gone in closer to see a bit of that. But it's with scenery that you look.
Yes, well, yeah.
Because you have your fiefdom up there as well, don't you?
No, we used to have a timeshare opposite Balmoral. Pure coincidence and, you know, nothing grand, but we used to walk a lot up into Loch Nagar and the Cairngorms. And, you know, my family are very, very keen hikers, so we were always out in all weathers up there. And so were they. So throughout my childhood, I saw...
Rubbed shoulders with
We really did. We saw William and Harry, we saw Diana and Fergie, we saw Her Majesty the Queen, Prince Philip, everybody. And it was a real
Is that
joy.
how you got your introduction to the Royal Mail?
You got to stop.
With your outfit. It's not me. The viewers and listeners are getting in touch and
Do
saying...
I look like a Royal Mail postie?
Is Isabel supporting the Post Workers
Strikes.
Union strikes, the CWU?
My postie wears red.
What?
My postie wears a red jumper and shorts every day.
No, but their over jackets are blue with red trim
right, well,
on them as well. It was very nice.
Could have a second career in that if it all goes wrong. Yeah.
Well,
at this rate.
We're going to take a break there. After that, the Prime Minister goes to New York.
Yes.
She's going to make her debut speech to the United Nations. Ooh, that would be scary, wouldn't it? Let's have a look at the weather picture and see what's happening today.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many this afternoon, but breezy with some drizzly rain in the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. Well, starting off in the southwest, and here any mist and fog patches will clear by lunchtime to leave a dry but often cloudy afternoon, feeling warm in any sunny breaks. It's a similar picture across the southeast, where it will be dry and fine this lunchtime with some bright or sunny breaks developing. In South Wales, once any mist and fog clears this morning, it will be dry through the rest of the day, with temperatures getting into the high teens Celsius. And whilst it will be mostly dry across the Midlands, as we head into the afternoon, there is a chance of some isolated showers. These will be mostly light, and many will stay dry. There's also the chance of 1 or 2 showers in the northeast. Here, it may perhaps be a little brighter than elsewhere, but there will still be quite a bit of cloud. In the north and west of Scotland, it will be a damp afternoon with some drizzly rain. Elsewhere, it's looking mostly dry but quite cloudy with the odd shower. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, the best of any brightness this afternoon will be towards the southeast with thicker cloud and perhaps a little rain at times in the northwest. So little change through the afternoon with drizzly rain in the northwest, mostly dry but rather cloudy elsewhere. And that is how the weather is shaping up for you this Tuesday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Very good to see you again. On the news front, the Prime Minister is set to meet with Joe Biden, the American President, and other world leaders. This is at the United Nations General Assembly. That's in New York.
Well, in Liz Truss's first foreign trip as Prime Minister, she'll focus on the war in Ukraine and the global crisis in food security. GB News' political editor, Darren McCaffrey, has flown to New York and has the latest for us.
Well, it's 2 weeks today since Liz Truss became Prime Minister. What an extraordinary couple of weeks it has been, clearly dominated by that national period of mourning, which effectively meant that lots of government business ground to a halt. But with the Queen's funeral yesterday and that national period of mourning now at an end, politics is grinding back into gear again. And Liz Truss is embarking on her first foreign trip as Prime Minister here to New York to attend the United Nations General Assembly. And she's got a busy couple of days ahead, meeting lots of different world leaders, including Emmanuel Macron, the French President, the Prime Minister of Spain, the President of Turkey, the Prime Minister of Lithuania, the EU Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, and, of course, US President Joe Biden. She was due to meet him in Downing Street on Sunday, but that got cancelled, and now it's going to go ahead on the sidelines here of the United Nations in New York. Now, clearly, as Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss will have met and knows many of these world leaders, but this is the first time she will be dealing with them on equal terms, and it is a key moment for any Prime Minister, not least of all, as I say, after the whirlwind couple of weeks that she has had. What's likely to dominate? Well, clearly Ukraine, given the concerns that war is now grinding into autumn and winter that could get quite difficult despite recent successes. Could there be possibly more military aid or other support in different forms? Energy security is also likely to play a big role here. Continued concerns in Western Europe about the schemes that governments are putting in place to try and prevent that cost of living crisis that's likely to buffet lots of European countries in the months ahead. And also, it's difficult, I think, probably to get away from Brexit. It's certainly going to come up, I would have thought, in those discussions with Emmanuel Macron and with Ursula von der Leyen, not least of all because the Northern Ireland protocol still hasn't been sorted. Liz Truss insists she would like to see some type of deal, but is she prepared to take unilateral action if necessary, and how would the EU respond to that? So politics is very much back in game here in New York City. She is also, the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, going to make a speech at the United Nations tomorrow night at the General Assembly, an annual event that takes place every year, but another big platform for the new British Prime Minister. And then it's back to home and to London, where the politics is simply not going to stop, because we're expecting a mini budget effectively on Friday ahead of the party conference season as Parliament comes back into session too. So it is, after an extraordinary couple of weeks for the Prime Minister, going to be another testing time for her, but a big moment as she makes her first foreign trip here to New York.
Darren McCaffrey with that for us in New York. Here in the studio, though, we can speak to the assistant editor at Conservative Home, William Atkinson. Good to see you again. Good to be able to reflect on what else is going on in the world. An important trip for Liz Truss, this. First foreign as Prime Minister, and that maiden speech to look forward to. What are the things to look out for? I mean, do you think she needs to be worried, for example, that the Biden administration was sort of non-committal about meeting in London over the weekend?
I wouldn't necessarily be overtly worried about that. As we well know, President Biden's advancing years means that he can't take on too many engagements a day, and I expect with the number of different receptions and the like that he was attending, there wasn't necessarily time to then get in a meeting with the Prime Minister as well, especially as she herself has been quite busy over the last week. But no, I wouldn't. I would say that the major things to look out for are, first of all, the Prime Minister's speech she's going to make to the General Assembly, where she's going to suggest that the United Kingdom is going to spend at least the same 2.3 billion it spent this year on helping Ukraine. It's probably going to extend its commitment. So, of course, we're already the second largest military contributor to Ukraine after the United States. And secondly, she's going to have this meeting with President Biden. Now, things to look out for there are tensions over the Northern Ireland Protocol, which has been one of the major sticking points in UK-US relations over the last couple of years, but also to see if Truss is asked about President Biden's comments a couple of days ago about the US's stance towards Taiwan, where he suggested in an interview that the US would defend Taiwan if it was ever attacked by mainland China. And this rather breaks with the strategic ambiguity that the United States has been trying to keep over Taiwan for the last 50 or so years.
And how special still do you think the relationship is with the United States? Because Liz Truss and indeed Boris Johnson, or I suppose any sort of Conservative leader, isn't a natural ally with a Democratic administration, and particularly Liz Truss, who's so aligned with Margaret Thatcher and I suppose the Reagan era. It's not a natural bedfellow, is it, for President Biden?
Yes, exactly. I think I'd say that sort of politically, Truss and Biden are further apart in their approaches to economics and indeed sort of geostrategy than perhaps any Prime Minister since maybe Clinton and Major, a pair of Prime Ministers and Presidents, I should say.
Does that explain why he was in row 14?
Yes.
Well, I think that's partly because clearly whoever was driving the beast, as it's pompously known, got a bit lost in the streets of London. But also I think it's actually quite special that the United States is reminded that for losing the monarchy as it did in the 18th century in its silly little rebellion, they've got to sit behind all various sort of princes and kings and queens and the like of Europe when they're attending
So the
events.
fact
Are you seriously saying that he lost his place because he was late?
Well, I think partially. I think there was actually quite a moving moment where he actually had to wait while all the recipients of the Victoria and George Cross and the like went past to sit down first. And I thought that showed for one day, President Biden, you're not the most important man in the world.
Might be humbling, probably not that helpful when, as we gather, they want to revisit discussions about some sort of trade deal with the United States. Nevertheless, a humbling moment for the president. And this United Nations, as you say, focusing on Ukraine, focusing on this bilateral. And also, I think Liz Truss will be meeting with Macron there as well?
Yes, so I will remember one of these sort of stand-up moments of the rather protracted Tory leadership campaign, even though it seems like a century or so ago now, was when Liz Truss was non-committal as to whether President Macron was a friend or foe. Now, I would say about the incredibly gentlemanly and inspiring way that President Macron has spoken about Her late Majesty over the last week or so, he should very much be in the friends camp, despite any temporary tensions we might have over Brexit and the like.
Good to hear. All right.
Thanks, William.
Thank you very much.
It's lovely to hear William say Macron in a normal...
You said it
English
yesterday.
way.
I nearly interrupted, but we were covering the Queen's
Well,
story. You said Macron yesterday. You did.
Well,
You've caught it.
did I?
Yeah. How do you say pret-à-manger?
Pret-à-manger.
Oh, how pretentious. I've thought about this.
Isabel has this little frog in her throat when she does President Macron.
President Macron. I can speak French, but you say pret-à-manger. It's
William
very
can
different.
say Macron. I can say... It's probably Irish. He's Macron.
My best friend lives in Perth. They say pret-à-manga.
Do they?
Which makes me laugh. But I clocked that and I thought I'm going to throw that at Eamonn next time he mocks
What
my
does
French.
pret-à-manger mean?
Ready to eat.
Is it?
Pret-à-manger. Manger is to eat, ready to eat.
Oh, anyway. After the break, we're going to go through the newspapers. We've got Norman Baker and Emily Carver getting their teeth into those.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you.
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio and online. We're proud to be the People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. It's just gone 20 to 7. It's time to review the papers this morning. We're joined by the former Liberal Democrat Minister, Norman Baker, and the Conservative Home columnist, Emily Carver. Very warm welcome to both of you.
The thing about the papers today is that they're photographic specials. There are so many wonderful, beautiful pictures. Well, this is the one I think you and me really want to emphasise, the pallbearers, which is the front of the Mirror.
This one
and,
on the Telegraph.
Emily, you're going with this one?
Yes, the front of the Mirror. It's the same image, I think, replicated across many of the papers.
Yeah.
It's of the coffin bearers, the young lads who carried the coffin for rather a long time throughout proceedings yesterday. And it's quite a moving image. Of course, it's a moving image of the Queen being put to rest finally after, 10 days of mourning. For me, one of the most moving moments was when the congregation burst out into the national anthem. That was where I got a little bit weepy. I'm rather stoic about such things, but that got me. That got me. But yes, all of the papers
Knowing
have...
it was really the last time you would hear in tribute to Elizabeth.
Exactly that. And just as someone who can be rather patriotic at times, it really got me.
I thought the bagpiper was absolutely extraordinary. It sort of rattles your bones even when you're not there. I don't know what it is. It's sort of just very evocative.
I thought, one stage last night, I thought an idea for the programme would be to get a bagpiper in...
We had a bagpiper on Burns night.
I know, that's why I thought, have him back.
Oh, right.
Because the thing that you rightly point out is, and there is a Scotsman amongst us here, how haunting, Norman.
The bagpipes are very evocative, very haunting. And I remember being in a pub in my local constituency in Firle when they had a Scots pipe band there for New Year's Eve, quite a small pub, and it just filled the place with deafening, but also just it takes you over. It's a fantastic sound, actually.
Not to be disrespectful, but the bagpipes, they really do. They can be slightly jarring.
Emily!
They can be slightly.
Only if misplaced.
But certainly fitting in this scenario.
But you chose the Mirror. Can we just look at the back page? And I don't know if we've got the graphic or if I just hold it up to this camera for you. And it's a picture of a corgi yesterday. So they've got, which one's two now?
Yeah, you're all right.
I'm on the right one.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously they've got the front cover of the coffin and then the back with the corgi saying "missing you."
I didn't notice that. That's so sweet.
It's lovely.
And there was a later shot at Windsor, wasn't there, of the Queen's pony as well. But Isabel, just saying, as regards my funeral, I've had a rethink of certain things. I did want a rendition of Elvis Presley singing "Bridge Over Troubled Water." I thought that would be quite good.
Was that not Simon and Garfunkel?
Yes, but Elvis does it better. Yes,
that's really?
That was a good way. When you're weary, feeling low, you don't know that.
Why don't we get you singing it and we'll get a hologram?
You've got a nice voice.
You've got a really good voice.
Then I thought, no. I thought in Wales there was a harpist that greeted at one of the services.
Oh, you want a harpist?
And I thought an Irish harp. The harp is a beautiful... I know you're not keen on the bagpipes. You any better with the harp?
The harp would be lovely.
Harp would be lovely. I think... Well, what do you think? You're the musician.
Yes, harps are good.
Yeah.
Big thumbs up to that one. But
Have you thought about what you want at your funeral?
Yes, but I don't think it'll be a harp or a bagpipes, really. It'll be more kind
rock and roll.
Rock and roll, yeah.
Really?
Roll, yeah.
I want to be in a wicker casket underneath it and a tree.
No, I don't. I want bishops and cardinals there. I want people dressed in black and...
I think it's cremation.
A period of mourning.
I'll not be cremated either.
No, you're a Catholic.
Not
be
do
cremated.
all of that. Can't do that. So I like... Maybe just something like what the Queen had yesterday. I'd like something like
something small like that.
Something like that.
Understated.
That would be fine. That would be fine. Right, Norman, we go to the Express for you. This is deep inside the Express, and they talk about the changing face of Britain under Queen Elizabeth's reign.
Well, indeed, because, I mean, as we all know, the Queen was on the throne for a very, very long time, and in that time, Britain changed, enormously, and as captured here in the Express, changed from a country that had an empire, where rationing was still in place before we ever saw Bill Haley or the Beatles or anything else. And looking at some of the prices on the right-hand side, a pint of beer was 6p, 9p in old money, 6p in present currency, and a loaf of bread was 6p in old money, which is not very different in price, and yet now the beer is £3.95 and the loaf of bread £1.24. So inflation has affected things in different ways. But I think yesterday sort of demonstrated that you know, this wasn't just the passing of the Queen, it was also passing of an era and how, you know, Britain will never be the same again. And I think people had an opportunity to look back at how Britain had been. We just come out of World War II, after all, and now we're a totally different country. So I think part of people's involvement yesterday was to reflect on that as much as anything else.
Well, Tessie Ojo was talking about her mentality, her, you know, service before and duty before anything else, and I do think that was, you know, typical of that generation.
Yes.
The war generation were very conscious of that, and that is going, isn't it?
Well, I think it is, because the war generation had to pull together. They had to. It was a matter of survival, and everybody helped everybody else, and that sort of feeling. Perhaps it was recaptured yesterday in, you know, some of the communities. I saw your report from the Dog and Parrot, strange name for a pub, up in Nottingham. And perhaps people do want that sense of community back again.
Yeah. I think that was what part of the grief was. For those, obviously, many of us never knew the Queen personally, or never met her, or never even in her, never been close to her in any way, but that nostalgia for, you know, the past and patriotism and how much has changed in this country over the years. I imagine that was a huge part of some people's grief.
This article you chose, Norman, I think it's worth a read for people in the Express today, because it reminds us one television channel.
Yes.
Football players on £20 a week. Now, that seems derogatory, except when you bear in mind the average weekly wage was £9. So it was double the average weekly wage to be a footballer.
But Stanley Matthews, the top player of the day, was on £20 a week, the same as the worst player in the Football League. I mean, you know, you could be outstanding in your game and not be rewarded in those days, really.
Yeah, well, I always think they always had a good deal. You're doing something you love and you're being paid double what most people are being paid, whereas now, of course, it's right off the scale.
But it rots them, and I don't think they even appreciate. Probably isn't good for them. So I think it's.
There's a lot of nostalgia in this essay, in this article. Crime was much lower than it is today.
Yeah.
People stayed married for longer.
Oh, God,
all of this.
No, I can't bear it.
But you only had one TV channel, so...
Yeah, and your teeth fell out a lot more then.
Your teeth fell out, and you didn't live as long.
Emily, The Guardian you've chosen, talking about the thousands of people taking to the street. I don't know where everybody was yesterday, if anybody was able to get out on the streets. I was lucky enough to after work. What's The Guardian's take on all of it?
Yes, so essentially this is a collection of stories from the crowds in Westminster and also in Windsor, of people who were there and why they were there. Some people said, I just wanted to get a perfect spot to pay my respects to a lovely woman. That is what she was to many people, a lovely woman who had, you know, values that people really respected. They talk about how people there had genuine, deep emotions. Some people just wanted to be there for the history, to be at such a historical moment, something that we'll remember for generations. And yes, it's just a collection of stories like that, why people were there, how King Charles has big shoes to fill, and whether he'll step up to the plate.
Apparently there were 1 million extra people in London yesterday, but they were on the route of the funeral cortege. Outside that, once you could break away outside that, the city was empty, absolutely empty. And it was amazing to see. And the thing that I think that all our major cities got right was electronic billboards all had some tribute to Her Majesty. And it was a beautiful uniformity. Trafalgar Square we're talking about. I know this happened in Manchester, this happened in Glasgow and Birmingham as well. And I just thought that was lovely. Somebody got that really right.
What's that famous junction that we stopped at yesterday? I can't think of the name of it. Is it? I want to say Piccadilly, but you've got kind of a crossroads and you've got all the big... It's almost like...
Trafalgar Square.
It wasn't Trafalgar Square with Nelson's column.
Piccadilly? No. St James's.
No, I don't know where I mean.
Trafalgar Square. Cambridge Circus, where were you?
Cambridge Circus sounds possible.
Leicester Square. What? Monopoly. Think Monopoly.
No, well, I'll look it up and come back to you.
Well,
What was lovely was that cinemas were showing the ceremony, and also people were all over the country sitting outside watching it on big screens, from Wolverhampton to Swindon.
I need to unpick Isabel here in a minute.
Sorry.
Where are you
look
talking
on your
about?
phone, look it up, because you took a picture, you leant out the car window.
Yeah, but what?
It's not Trafalgar Square, it wasn't Nelson's Column, it wasn't...
It was Trafalgar Square.
It wasn't where the National Gallery...
where are all the billboards?
Yeah, all the billboards, right
in London.
In the centre of town.
Where?
You've got Piccadilly, it is Piccadilly.
Piccadilly.
There you go. Piccadilly, yeah. But that was huge. I mean, it was like the whole side of a building, and it wraps around in a curve, and it was black.
Yes, yeah.
With the ER in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely Piccadilly.
OK,
Yeah, it was very, very poignant. Let's talk about the war in Ukraine, Norman. I think this story is a casualty of other things that have happened, Queen Elizabeth's death, whatever as well. Where are we at with Ukraine? The Times, page 24.
Yes. Well, I mean, Liz Truss's... The politics is back, let's be quite clear. There's been a huge delay in politics in this country. First of all, the Tory party leadership, and then obviously the delay caused by the passing of the Queen means nothing much has happened openly in front of the TV cameras or in Parliament for some weeks now, and there's a lot been building up. We've also got the mini budget on Friday, but clearly one of the major issues has been Ukraine. Liz Truss, as we heard in the news, is going to make her first address to the UN, and she's promising billions more in military help for Ukraine. We are the second largest donor of weapons and money to Ukraine, I think, after the United States. So she's making that a continuation, in a way, of her predecessor, Boris Johnson, in terms of the commitment which she's making. And I suppose the encouragement will come from the fact that the Ukrainians now are making military advances. So there was some concern, I think, in places like Germany, that this was money, good money after bad. But actually, I think the government's been right on this to promote this issue in this way. And I think we are going to see more weapons coming in. The Russians are clearly lacking in morale. The Ukrainians are feeling pretty up about everything. They are making big incursions in the north around Kharkiv, and indeed in the south now near Kherson. So I think that is the correct policy. And in a sense, it's a non-controversial policy, I think, for this country, because people seem to be signed up to that approach. OK, are you signed up to that approach? Let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet us at gbnews as well. Guys, Norman and Emily, see you again in 40 minutes' time. Thank you very much indeed. Well, actually, you may want to sit in on this and give us, your views. No,
goodness.
Yes, because this is an injection. Nobody likes an injection, but this is a contraceptive injection for men. Yeah. That's the bad news. The good news is it could put an end to vasectomies, or the snip, as it is sometimes referred to.
Yeah, this is all based on research by the Indian Institute for Technology. They've said the injection could be ready in as little as a year. So we're asking this morning, should men be taking more responsibility when it comes to birth control?
OK, we're joined by public health psychologist Dr. Amanda Wilson, who will give us her take on all of this. Now, it is over to men to take responsibility. The thing is, and I can hear my colleague, I can hear her brain turning in her head.
Don't trust a man.
There you go. Those are the very words. Nobody trusts a man. Tell us more, Amanda.
Yeah, well, that's a good start. So what's great about this product is it actually lasts between 10 to 15 years. So you don't have to worry about whether they're going to be taking it daily like they would a male contraceptive pill, or whether they're rubbing it on their shoulder or arm daily like they would with a male contraceptive gel.
I mean, I suppose the comment I meant by, ultimately, if you fall pregnant, it affects the woman. So a lot of women want to take responsibility for that, just to ensure their own
But men are just
health.
consumed by visceral lust. Is that what
well,
you're saying?
no, that's totally separate. I just think that women are very
them.
aware
Men
of what
are
it...
not going to be responsible.
But this idea...
They just want action.
Well, maybe. But this injection is considered to be less painful and a reversible equivalent to vasectomy. So a huge game changer, especially, I would argue, for those people who've already had their children.
Could I ask a question?
Please do.
As a man.
Oh, gosh.
Amanda, where do you get this injection? Where does it actually penetrate?
Yeah, so you would have a local anesthesia similar to a vasectomy, and it's injected into both of the tubes of the vas deferens.
Oh, right, so it's in the business area, not into the leg or something.
Into both of the tubes where?
Well, just in the business area.
In the business area.
So that would explain if you want to reverse it, you have to have an injection of water and baking soda, which presumably is something to do with unclogging the valves also in the business area.
I take quite a lot of baking soda. It's very good for reflux.
Good.
So it is, but also it could be...
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that will flush out the gel. So when the gel's injected, it forms almost like a plug. And the sperm still travel through it, but when they do, the enzyme is removed. So when they come out on the other end, they're actually not able to fertilize an egg.
Gosh, that is absolutely incredible.
Well, it's incredible if it works. But Amanda, who does the injection? Is it left to a man, or do you go to a clinic to get the injection?
So you would go to a clinic to get the injection. It would probably in this country be done by a urologist. And they would make sure that they took care with the anesthesia. It would also be cheaper than a vasectomy.
Would it last?
10 to 15 years.
Wow, that is amazing.
You would get it replaced after that, if you wanted to continue to use it.
I mean, that's quite a window to say 10 to 15. Is it 10 or is it 15? Because you don't want 5 years in the middle of not really being sure.
So what we find is that men from different backgrounds suppress sperm at different rates. So that explains the 10 to 15 years. But there are ways to check to make sure that it's still working. There's a lot of at-home semen sample tests that you can buy these days over the internet. So you could even check that yourself if you were unsure.
Well, you know what? It's not a topic people like discussing, but it's hugely important. And you know, if it means men don't have to go for the snip, a lot of men I know find even the thought of that untenable. This, as I say, could be a huge game changer. As you say, cheaper as well than surgery.
What do the results say? What do the results say? I mean, how effective is this?
What percentage?
Yeah, so it had a failure rate of 4.3%, and that was mostly due to administration error.
4.3%.
Yeah, 4.3%.
So 95.7%, is that right? Successful, which is a tiny bit lower than, say, the female contraceptive pill. So slight risk, higher risk than of a pregnancy.
Yes, but it is lower than typical condom use failure.
Is it? What percentage is that?
That's a bit higher. It ranges, so it can be almost double that.
Gosh.
There you go.
But the most effective way of all, Amanda, is abstention. That's it. Keeping yourself pure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with it.
I'm just saying. That's the way it is. But she is the scientist. She is Dr. Amanda Wilson, the public health psychologist at De Montfort University. I passed that the other. It's in Leicester, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a nice little uni.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I was up at football the other day and I passed that. That was good. Amanda, thank you very much indeed. You think this is going to be reality, do you?
Yeah, so it's gone to the Food and Drug Administration for approval, so that's all they're waiting on at this stage.
Okay. Amanda, when it all becomes practice, we'll ask you again. We'll talk again.
Yeah.
From De Montfort University in Leicester, public health psychologist Dr. Amanda Wilson. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, after the break...
Abstention, that's what I believe in.
Okay, good for you. I'm not commenting any further on your boyish jokes. It's a very serious matter. Family planning.
Good.
Anyway, another serious matter, of course, Her Majesty's funeral. We'll be reflecting some more on all of that after she was laid to rest yesterday in a very moving private ceremony in Windsor.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Seven o'clock is the time. The Queen buried in Windsor, surrounded by her family, after a funeral ceremony unparalleled in living memory.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Tuesday, the 20th of September. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, the Queen's been led to rest next to her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, at St George's Chapel in Windsor in a private ceremony surrounded by her family.
It followed a grand funeral ceremony at Westminster Abbey and a military parade through London commemorating the Queen's life and service, bringing an end to the Elizabethan age.
The Prime Minister, Liz Truss, has flown to New York in her first foreign trip as Prime Minister to attend the United Nations General Assembly. She will make Ukraine the focus of her speech and will also hold talks with President Biden during her time there.
And 6 million people will today receive a £150 disability cost of living payment. It will be made automatically and is intended to offset the high cost of care and transport being faced by people with disabilities.
You can join in the discussions, and you've been doing that this morning. Paul talking about Ukraine, and we were talking about funding Ukraine and the war there. And he said, remember what Mrs Thatcher said, it's not Liz Truss or the government. Oh yeah, see with them, Mrs Thatcher couldn't have talked about Liz Truss. I'm just getting this right.
Right, okay.
So basically, Paul is saying it's not Liz Truss or the government giving Ukraine billions of pounds. Remember what Mrs Thatcher said. It's the taxpayer and they need it in their pockets. So it's not government money, it's your money. Really with this.
Lots of comments as well about yesterday's state funeral. Catherine from Nairobi in Kenya has got in touch to say, never have we felt we were too far from the UK and all those in mourning. You have captured every detail meticulously. We enjoyed listening to all the guests on your show. What a lovely message, Catherine. Thank you. And Jerry in Ramsgate saying the whole country should give thanks to the military for all the superb, moving and magnificent state funeral they performed for Her Majesty. And yeah, we'd echo that sentiment, absolutely.
We would echo that. And what I think, you know, I know the military find it difficult to recruit these days, but I thought looking at all of that...
Good advert.
Good advert. Good advert for it. And again, we've said this morning, we'll say it again, those pallbearers, those young lads who did that job so impeccably. I mean, they didn't put a foot wrong. I suppose they couldn't have put a foot wrong. No. Failure was not an option. But what a credit they were. I think that they should each be given some sort of honour.
I absolutely
medal
feel sure they will be.
Yeah, you know, they should be given something.
And I'm sure there were some firm handshakes behind the scenes as well. Get in touch. We love to hear from you. And so our top story this morning, the Queen has been laid to rest alongside her late husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, in a private service inside St George's Chapel in Windsor.
GB News' Cameron Walker looks back now at the historic state funeral for the Queen yesterday.
An event planned for decades, but military precision all came down to this moment. A final farewell to a Queen who reigned over us for more than 70 years. Her Majesty's coffin was taken in procession from Westminster Hall, where thousands had filed past to pay their respects, in the state gun carriage of the Royal Navy, pulled by 142 Royal Naval ratings. A tradition dating back to the time of Queen Victoria. At the King's request, the wreath on top of the coffin contained flowers from the gardens of Buckingham Palace, Clarence House and Highgrove, rosemary for remembrance, and myrtle, the ancient symbol of a happy marriage, used in the Queen's own wedding bouquet in 1947. A handwritten note from the King read, "In loving and devoted memory," signed Charles R. A life of service was accompanied by a life in the public eye. Members of the royal family, their dignity and stoicism shone through in the face of unimaginable grief. Princess Charlotte's choice of brooch in the shape of a horseshoe was gifted by her great-grandmother, the Queen. She, alongside her future king brother George, processed behind the coffin with their parents, the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Her late Majesty famously declared on a 21st birthday broadcast that her whole life would be dedicated to serving the nation and Commonwealth. Rarely has such a promise been so well kept.
The Queen was consulted on all of the funeral plans. The hymn you're hearing was played at the Queen's wedding to Prince Philip in 1947. Mounties of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police led the procession from Westminster Abbey to Wellington Arch. Crowds shared in the King's grief, witnessing him and members of his family march behind his mother's coffin. A state hearse brought the Queen's coffin for the committal service at Windsor Castle. More than 800 people, including the Queen's personal staff, filled St George's Chapel. In stark contrast to Prince Philip's funeral, where just 30 people could attend because of COVID restrictions. The imperial state crown, the orb and the sceptre were removed from the coffin and placed on the high altar. The King then placed the Queen's camp colour of the Grenadier Guards on the coffin. The wand broken, creating the symmetry with the three instruments of state being removed, ready to be passed on to their successor.
But the merciful goodness of the Lord endureth for ever and ever upon them that fear him.
The Queen was buried with her late husband, Prince Philip, in a private service. Royal mourning continues, grieving together as a family. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Well, with that, we go to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, in Windsor this morning. Paul, over to you.
Yeah, morning, Eamonn. Morning, Isabel. Yeah, really moving scenes last night from that committal service at St George's Chapel, just behind us within the grounds of Windsor Castle. And then after that, there was that private family service, no cameras, no media, where the Queen's body was reunited with Philip's. So really moving scenes. And also the royal family tweeting last night some pictures that we'd not seen of the Queen before. The first, a colour one of her, we think that's in Balmoral, where she's walking uphill with the staff in hand. Fantastic picture. And then the other one that they tweeted was of her, a black and white picture of her with her family, with Prince Philip, with her mum, with her dad and with her sister. who she has been reunited with in the private memorial chapel behind me. In terms of what the atmosphere is like in Windsor this morning, Windsor's just waking up. It's a beautiful morning, although quite a loud morning around the castle. Lots of lorries and trucks moving about and lots of cleaning vehicles because, of course, millions of people were here to see the procession as it made its way down the Long Walk yesterday, and so the town very much in clean-up mode this morning.
It's all very busy there, and as you can see, back to business, I suppose you could say, Paul.
Well, we had all of that yesterday, didn't we? So we feel your pain, Paul. Thank you. We're going to turn to
it's pretty busy.
Yeah, we're going to turn.
As usual.
Yes, we're going to turn to the former royal correspondent Nicholas Owen, who joins us in the quieter studio, I'm pleased to say. And good morning to you, Nicholas.
Good morning.
Gosh, what a few days, 10 days. I mean, a lot to reflect on, really. But yesterday, the pinnacle of it all, and you know, a farewell to do her proud.
Oh yes, absolutely. You see, I've still got the black tie on, and I just.
Although you don't have to.
No, I don't have to.
From midnight.
Period of royal mourning, so the royal family stay in mourning, but the rest of the country doesn't have to.
Indeed not. But I just feel I don't. I don't want to let it go just yet.
Yeah.
I don't want to let it go. I am old enough to remember the coronation of Her Majesty the Queen. In fact, I'm old enough to remember just about a world of King George VI on the throne. So, like so many people have said, I measure my own years. I measured my own years. And I'll be very honest with you, why not at this time of the morning? We can say this to each other. I'd begun to get to the point where I thought I may not live long enough to see King Charles III on the throne, you know. I feel reasonably fit. I'm just a 16 months older than him, you know, but, you know, he's got people to look after him day and night. I have to make an appointment with the GP, and that's jolly difficult these days. So for me, this is a period I just don't want to quite let it go.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Talking about let it go, was it just me? There was that beautiful moment in St George's Chapel when the coffin was descending into the ground.
Yeah.
And everybody was watching and saying, gosh, what happens next? What happens next? And it goes down, 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 down. And then we cut to the piper.
Yeah.
And then when we came back to the chapel, the coffin was gone. I felt a bit cheated by that.
Wow.
Well, here's the thing. At the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral, I think the instruction must have gone out that we saw the coffin, then there was pictures, the awful pictures we'll all remember of Her Majesty Queen on her own with a mask, and nobody with her. That was so heartrending, wasn't it? When we next saw the chapel, the coffin had gone.
Yeah.
And I said, what happened to that? Where did it go? This time, we got not long, they didn't linger on it very long, but just enough to see it descend. And as you say, that's the moment when you think, well, it really is goodbye, ma'am.
But why would they not have continued with that? Why, whatever happens, a hole in the ground and then it's covered up or whatever, why is that considered bad taste? Is that considered lack of privacy for a very public person?
I guess it's a bit of that. I think it's a bit of that, yes. You remember, again, going back to Prince Philip's funeral, that although we saw the pictures of the Queen, there was no dwelling on them. Right. And I think people, quite rightly, at a funeral, particularly of a Queen, particularly somebody who's been on the throne for so long, who is mourning, obviously, seeing her husband taken away for the last time, you know, proper behaviour.
Yeah.
And that's fine, isn't it?
Can we talk about the senior members of the royal family and how they managed to really, to a large extent, have a stiff upper lip yesterday? I mean, I did see one picture of Meghan with water running down her face, tear running down her face. Few images where Prince Charles looks like he's on the verge, Prince Andrew grimacing, and I saw one photo of Princess Charlotte being sort of comforted briefly by her mother. But by and large, you know, given that she was a close member of their family, they managed to hold it together, which is incredible.
Yes, I suppose it is incredible, but, you know, it's what is expected, really, isn't it? I don't think we want a king stumbling along in tears behind the coffin. I've been saying over the last few days, a terribly unenviable situation for him. He's not only had to be in the position of mourning his mother and all the things that will be going through his mind and the sadness and everything else. But he's also got to get started on the new reign as well. And the two jobs are running in parallel. And there were sort of rather odd moments to me in a way when he, gets out of his car and talks to everyone and shakes hands and so on and waves.
Being cheered.
Yes, cheered. The new wave. Have you seen the new wave? The Queen was terribly famous for. Well, it was a kind of circular job. Particularly the Queen Mother did that. But this is a proper sort of, hello, really nice to see you. So he's trying to do the two things at once. Stoical and everything else. I don't think anybody would have minded if there had been a tear roll down some cheeks. Meghan is younger and comes from America and so on, and perhaps a slightly different approach, but that's fine.
I must say the Countess...
And she's an actress. Let's not forget.
Well,
the Countess of Wessex was definitely having a blub, actually, now I think of it. I saw her faffing with some tissues quite a lot.
Well, can I tell you a story? Again, I'm happy to do it in your studio here. A friend of mine, a great friend of mine, was with Sophie Wessex on Thursday afternoon at an event, a civic event, and everything was going terribly smoothly. And then a man appeared out of the and said, "Can I have a word, ma'am?" Whispered something in her ear, and my friend said she will never forget the way Sophie's face went ashen.
She was very close to the Queen.
She was. She was always said to be the Queen's favourite. I always take these stories with a bit of a pinch of salt. Sometimes it seemed to be Andrew, sometimes it seemed to be Sophie. Who knows? But I think they got on terribly well. Yes,
I was outside.
Terribly well.
I was outside Windsor when Prince Philip passed away, and a number of the royals were coming out of the castle, and she pulled down her window and sort of thanked the press, and she had tears streaming down her face. Then you could tell she really feels it, the loss, and obviously her children very much part.
She's very human. She's very human, is Sophie. There's no, and I pay tribute too. I think people, her husband, the Prince Edward, tends to get a bit forgotten in all of this. Another person who I have found in recent years, not easygoing, that's quite the wrong word, but he's approachable and friendly and so on. These people have done a terrific
Their
part.
children, I thought, have come out of this well. Both their children, I can't remember what the names,
Louise and Viscount Seven, James.
Yeah, James. And he was very dignified,
very young.
the coffin and things as well,
very young.
doing all of that. Nicholas, thank you, really appreciate it. Nicholas Owen is a former royal correspondent. Really appreciate your take on things. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
OK, with the time at 7:16, let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines. And the Prime Minister says negotiations for a post-Brexit free trade deal with the United States will not restart for years. Liz Truss made the admission as she flew to New York to speak at the United Nations General Assembly ahead of a meeting with the US President Joe Biden.
The new Justice Secretary set to meet with striking barristers for the first time since they walked out over pay. Brandon Lewis will sit down with the Criminal Bar Association today, something his predecessor, Dominic Raab, had refused to do.
The European Court of Human Rights will rule later on whether the parents of Madeleine McCann were wronged by the Portuguese court system. Kate and Jerry McCann say they were unable to get a fair hearing against a former police detective who alleged they were involved in their daughter's disappearance in a book in 2008.
Today we'll see some 6 million people receive a one-off disability payment of £150.
This comes ahead of a so-called mini-budget or fiscal event that will take place this Friday, where the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng will lay out his plans to tackle the cost of living crisis.
Well, let's go to Anna Riley. Anna's our Yorkshire and Humber reporter. She's in Leeds this morning. And you've got a guest there. That's Anastasia Tempest, a journalist and writer whose cerebral palsy means that she relies on an electric wheelchair to get around. So over to you, Anna.
Good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Yes, I'm joined by Anastasia. Good morning, Anastasia.
Good morning, Anna.
Anastasia, we're hearing that we're getting this £150 one-off payment. People with disabilities, up to 6 million people can benefit from that. But what would that do for you, and how have you seen your bills rise with the cost of living?
Well, the cost of living has been absolutely awful. I mean, I've got a bill of over £5,000, and to be quite honest, £150 is not actually going to do anything. I mean, how about doubling the £150 or having some kind of special agreement where I could get some real support with electricity, because it's just an absolute nightmare. I mean, that's even worse than food. I mean, I just don't know. I've been to Sense, which is a disability charity. They made a contribution, which I'm very grateful for, but I shouldn't really have to go to a charity because I can't pay my electricity bill, and I use an electric wheelchair, and that, you know, that needs charging, and then there's the electric bed, and then there's heating, and then there's doing additional washing. So it's completely endless. It's I don't really know what to do, and I sent Liz Truss a little tweet. I like Twitter. I sent her a message about all this, but as to whether she'll respond is beyond me. But you know, people in government, they haven't really got a clue what they're doing. This is the sharp end of life, and this is the sharp end of cost of living, really.
And we're here in your bungalow. It's a one-bed bungalow in Leeds. So how much are your bills to heat this? Because you don't want to turn your heating off, do you?
I don't want to turn my heating off. And also there's another thing. I have to have my lights on all the time, because twice this year I was actually burgled, so I'm a nervous wreck. So I sleep with the light on because I'm just so nervous. I can't go around unplugging like the television, for example, or the fridge, and it's just not practical. So the whole thing is complete and utter nonsense, really.
I think you told me it's about £5,000, isn't it, that your bills are going up to? So what would be the right...
£5,032.12 to be precise.
Very precise. And what would be the right amount of money then? And do you think it would be better to be means tested then, rather than just a one-off £150 payment?
Yes, £150. It would be better to be means tested. People who are unfortunate to be on ESA don't seem to get much of a mention. And then there's also £400, which is going to everybody, whether you're a poor person or a billionaire, a millionaire, or wherever or whoever. You know, that doesn't seem right.
And how have you been coping then, just to keep going with the money that you've got?
I have a very good friend who's very supportive to me. I don't know very many people, you know, that just kind of happens, but she knows who she is. Hello. She's been very, very supportive, and if it wasn't from a very good friend, I don't know what I'd do.
Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you for sharing with us. So, yeah, people like Anastasia receiving that £150 one-off payment, but the question is that enough with the biting cost of living at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate that, Anna. And people's views very welcome in all of this. Gary in Lincolnshire, we're talking about budgets in general. And he's referring to, what did you say, it was a mini-budget?
A mini-budget on Friday, yes.
On Friday. And he's saying, on whose authority is Liz Truss promising billions more of taxpayers' money to Ukraine? Now, this is an issue that hasn't gone down well with you today. Certainly not mine as a taxpayer. People need to wake up to the fact that the Ukraine situation is nothing to do with helping Ukraine prevent Russia from taking over Europe, but purely to do with making the degenerate, powerful elite become even wealthier and more powerful at the expense of everyone else, says Gary in Lincolnshire. Cost of living incident. Oh, sorry, I don't know what this has got to do with cost of living, but boys and girls of the military, says Chaz, have done a cracking job. There's a few people saying this over the last week. I'm proud of them all, especially my mob, the RAF. It's a shame there are so many ex-servicemen living on the streets.
Well, that's true.
That just shows what the government thinks of the military.
And Paul says, I reported that my disability got worse and the Department of Work and Pensions took most of my disability payment away. Now I face months waiting on appeal. £150 doesn't come close to making up for it, and I never even received it today anyway.
Yeah. OK. Thanks for that, guys. Keep keeping those comments coming in. Who said that you deserve a medal to work for me? Who was that?
I haven't got his name now. You mention it, but we got lots. I was just reading through all of the emails. Here we go. Nigel Norman. Isabel, you'll soon meet the King when he gives you a medal for working with Eamonn.
Do you know what that is, Nigel Norman? Jealousy. Jealousy.
That's too right.
He's saying, how can that Eamonn charm the birds off the trees? He can see the way you look at me and adore me off the morning.
This medal's getting closer and closer and closer.
You can see it. But
will you come to my investiture?
Of course I will.
If I invite you?
Of course I will. You're my best friend.
Oh, we are. We're like besties.
You're my best friend.
Oh, that's the nicest thing.
I had to all people who suffer from chronic pain, and there's an awful lot of you. I had a really bad night last night. Who did I phone? I don't wake up my wife. No chance of doing that. I phone Isabel. I text her anyway, and then she texts me back, and she gives me words of comfort.
Yeah.
And then she doesn't live up to them the next day. She says, "Get off my phone, let me sleep." Basically, no, you're only joking. Very good. Very
Talk nonsense. I'm very good to you. I am your best friend. That's quite right.
If you had a saw, I would saw off my left
chop
leg.
off your leg. I'm so sorry. It's in a lot of pain. It's terrible.
Anyway, we will take a break there. What are we doing after that?
Well, after that, we'll be reflecting on the Prime Minister's first foreign trip. She's in New York for the United Nations General Assembly, and she'll be making a maiden speech there. We'll be reflecting on all of that after this. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many this afternoon, but breezy with some drizzly rain in the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. Well, starting off in the southwest, and here any mist and fog patches will clear by lunchtime to leave a dry but often cloudy afternoon, feeling warm in any sunny breaks. It's a similar picture across the southeast, where it will be dry and fine this lunchtime with some bright or sunny breaks developing. In South Wales, once any mist and fog clears this morning, it will be dry through the rest of the day, with temperatures getting into the high teens Celsius. And whilst it will be mostly dry across the Midlands, as we head into the afternoon, there is a chance of some isolated showers. These will be mostly light, and many will stay dry. There's also the chance of 1 or 2 showers in the northeast. Here it may perhaps be a little brighter than elsewhere, but there will still be quite a bit of cloud. In the north and west of Scotland, it will be a damp afternoon with some drizzly rain. Elsewhere, it's looking mostly dry but quite cloudy with the odd shower. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, the best of any brightness this afternoon will be towards the southeast with thicker cloud and perhaps a little rain at times in the northwest. So little change through the afternoon with drizzly rain in the northwest, mostly dry but rather cloudy elsewhere. And that is how the weather is shaping up for you this Tuesday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Coming up to 7:30, a very good morning to you on television, on radio, online. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Coming up at 7:45, we'll be asking what is next for Harry and Meghan as they make their return to the United States. We've got the LA reporter, Kinsey Schofield, joining us in the studio.
Wouldn't you just love to have been a fly on the wall when the service finished yesterday and those two got into their car?
I choose to believe... I really want the fairy tale, and I want her to say, I'm not going to cause any more trouble, I'm not going to do any more interviews, and Harry's going to go, I want to have a relationship with my gorgeous niece and nephew who I saw in the chapel and the Abbey, and they just look so gorgeous, and I just want it all to be okay.
Let me tell you the truth, right? So they get into the car, they close the doors, she looks at him, and she goes, well.
I know.
And he says, well. And she says, and then she unburdens herself.
All of her wrongs.
Yeah, I'd love to be the driver in that car.
Yeah.
Sitting there thinking.
But you're the same as my husband, because I said, I hope they're gonna, they're gonna stop now. And he said, how could she? All that racism, and she's brought nothing but trouble to the royal family at the end of the Queen Elizabeth's reign. And he's probably right. But I choose to hope. I live in hope.
Why do you? You're the biggest gossip I know. Why would you? If that was you and me in that car, you'd have got into that car and you'd have said to me, well, and you'd have named
I am a gossip, but I'm also a massive softie, and I like to think that those two brothers will find their way back together.
I'm not talking about the brothers.
Yeah, but I hope she can see that. I hope she can see that for the children's sake, for the grandchildren's sake. Oh, I just can't bear it.
I was made to stand behind her.
But maybe she's learning. That's just the way. That's just the way. I saw so many people making lots of the fact that Zara and Mike Tyndall, who are not working royals, were on the front row, and then Prince Harry and the Duchess of Sussex were behind the King as if that was a demotion, but I thought that they were closer to the crown. But there's so much analysis of all these things. Let them just be.
Obviously, I've met Zara Tyndall on
a
number of occasions.
Well, just the once, but, I had a lovely afternoon with her.
What a lovely woman
Very normal.
she is. I mean, very normal.
She's one for gossip. We'd get the truth out of her if we could have a couple of drinks with her. We'll look out for it, Cheltenham.
What I'm trying to say, she's really lovely and approachable.
And accomplished.
As for her mother, the Princess Royal, I mean...
Outstanding.
Outstanding. I think she should be elevated in some way.
Yeah.
And Charles will need some help, but she was very close to her mother as well.
Yeah, and
Tended to her mother in her last days.
Yeah, and in the car behind the hearse yesterday, actually. Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
So much, so many, so many people to praise and think that was lovely. But come on, get real. 8:10, we're going to be speaking to one of our GB News People's Champions, because by being a GB News People's Champion... What?
Coincidence.
You're going to spoil the story now.
Yeah.
Why don't you just say she became a GB People's Champion and then she was invited to the funeral?
Well, that is true. But
That's a better story.
But she was invited to the funeral because she already had an honour and she was in the birthdays.
Because we give her that mug, we give her one of those.
Yeah.
As a People's Champion nominated by you.
And the palace were like, we'll have her.
And they were on the phone straight away and they said, get her to the funeral.
We'll get the inside scoop anyway on that emotional day.
Guys, we talked about a few things there, sometimes in jest. Give us your opinions, gbviews@gbnews.uk and at GB News. Remember, here you hear the views that they don't dare let loose on other mainstream media.
So now the Prime Minister is set to meet with the US President Joe Biden and other world leaders at a United Nations General Assembly in New York.
Well, in her first foreign trip as PM, Ms Truss will focus on the war in Ukraine and the global crisis and food security. GB News political editor Darren McCaffrey, he's there in New York City. Let's go to him for the latest. Darren.
Well, it's 2 weeks today since Liz Truss became Prime Minister. What an extraordinary couple of weeks it has been, clearly dominated by that national period of mourning, which effectively meant that lots of government business ground to a halt. But with the Queen's funeral yesterday and that national period of mourning now at an end, politics is grinding back into gear again. And Liz Truss is embarking on her first foreign trip as Prime Minister here to New York to attend the United Nations General Assembly. And she's got a busy couple of days ahead, meeting lots of different world leaders, including Emmanuel Macron, the French President, the Prime Minister of Spain, the President of Turkey, the Prime Minister of Lithuania, the EU Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, And of course, US President Joe Biden. She was due to meet him in Downing Street on Sunday, but that got cancelled, and now it's going to go ahead on the sidelines here of the United Nations in New York. Now, clearly, as Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss will have met and knows many of these world leaders, but this is the first time she will be dealing with them on equal terms, and it is a key moment for any Prime Minister, not least of all, as I say, after the whirlwind couple of weeks that she has had. What's likely to dominate? Well, clearly Ukraine, given the concerns that war is now grinding into a autumn and winter that could get quite difficult despite recent successes. Could there be possibly more military aid or other support in different forms? Energy security is also likely to play a big role here. Continued concerns in Western Europe about the schemes that governments are putting in place to try and prevent that cost of living crisis that's likely to buffet lots of European countries in the months ahead. And also, it's difficult, I think, probably to get away from Brexit. It's certainly going to come up, I would have thought, in those discussions with Emmanuel Macron and with Ursula von der Leyen, not least of all because the Northern Ireland Protocol still hasn't been sorted. Liz Truss insists she would like to see some type of deal, but is she prepared to take unilateral action if necessary, and how would the EU respond to that? So politics is very much back in game here in New York City. She is also, the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, going to make a speech at the United Nations tomorrow night at the General Assembly, an annual event that takes place every year, but another big platform for the new British Prime Minister. And then it's back to home and to London, where the politics is simply not going to stop, because we're expecting a mini budget effectively on Friday ahead of the party conference season as Parliament comes back into session too. So it is, after an extraordinary couple of weeks for the Prime Minister, going to be another testing time for her, but a big moment as she makes her first foreign trip here to New York.
And thank you. Live from Times Square in New York. We're going through the papers. Read all about it with Norman Baker and Emily Carver after this.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
We're talking about Donald Trump said they would never have done it to me, but they did it to Joe Biden. What are we talking about? Row 14 at Westminster Abbey yesterday. And we've got Emily Carver and Norman Baker. First of all, with this one, Norman, what do you think?
Well, I mean, that's a diplomatic mistake of epic proportions, I think, in the way you don't treat the US president in that way. But, I mean, the meeting on Sunday was cancelled between Truss Liz Truss and Joe Biden. We don't quite know why that occurred. They're now meeting in the margins, which sounds like a downgrade when she goes to the UN. And I think what people may not appreciate is that Joe Biden feels very, very strongly about Northern Ireland because of his Irish roots. And he doesn't like the way that, as he sees it, Brexit has damaged the peace process and the Northern Ireland Agreement. And they've made it very clear, the Americans, that any suggestion of a trade deal with the UK is off the agenda until at least the Northern Ireland situation is stabilised. So I think it'll be a rather difficult meeting between Liz Truss and Joe Biden when she meets them.
Emily, what do you think?
Well, to be honest, I don't know if President Biden is really in a position to start making demands. He doesn't seem to be... His Irish roots, for example, seem to be exaggerated. I'm not sure he has direct links to Ireland. He's never lived there, that's for sure. But, I mean, it's very difficult. I don't know if this meeting has been timed differently because of, you know, potential disagreements or whatnot. It may just be timing of them both. And President Biden, we know, isn't in a particularly fit state. So he may well be quite tired from having come to London and then having to
I think his team is
back.
more than capable of organising around him and carrying him through to meetings on time if that were required. Yeah. I think it's a snub. I think it's a snub that this was cancelled over the weekend and they've been non-committal. I think they see Liz Truss as a continuation of Margaret Thatcher and the Reagan era, and he's spoken a lot about how he viewed Reagan politics, Reaganomics, as having negative trickle-down impact on society, and he wants to distance himself.
Well, I think having been in Britain for the state funeral, perhaps he should put that aside and actually be seen to want to work with the UK, particularly as what Norman was saying earlier, we are, for example, the second military contributor in terms of how much spend for Ukraine. It's very important that we have meetings together. There shouldn't be snubs from Biden to our democratically elected Prime Minister. That seems absurd.
Well, UK and US relations will go on. I mean, they always do go on, and they'll go on, for example, on security matters, which are never affected by the change of president, the change of Prime Minister very much. But I think this is a snub, and I think that whether or not he's got deep Irish roots or just believes he has, I don't know the answer to that. He clearly thinks it's a very important issue, and it is actually going to determine matters to some extent.
But the Northern Ireland Protocol is a domestic matter for our country. It is not for President Biden to decide that he will snub our Prime Minister because he disagrees with Brexit.
For the Good Friday Agreement and things. You know, they were heavily involved in all of that, Emily. The thing is that politics gets involved. The actual Brexit agreement as it stands at the moment could be a gold mine for Northern Ireland in the fact that we can trade with Europe and we can trade with the UK without any penalties. But it's been made into this political football by the Democratic Unionist Party. Yeah. So it's a difficult one to decide. I mean, they're not sitting. We don't have a parliament because of the Brexit agreement in Article 16. But
I do think it was well known that President Biden was anti-Brexit.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the reality we have to deal with, whether it's right or not. That's what we have to deal with.
Yeah, and especially if we want a free trade agreement with them, you know, post-Brexit.
Well, that's off the agenda. Yeah. It's also worth noting, I think, that when Liz Truss is in the US, she's going to meet President Macron. And, of course, that'll be a difficult meeting as well because he's very anti-Brexit. But also, it didn't help, frankly, that Liz Truss in the election campaign for the Tory party leadership said the jury was out whether he was a friend or a foe.
Yes, but I do think that unlike President Biden, President Macron actually smoothed some of that over during the preceding days to the funeral.
Yes, he did.
And, you know, made very warm words towards the United Kingdom, towards the monarchy, and that won't have gone without notice.
No. I love cars, Emily. I love cars. I could
go
out for a day. I could be in showrooms. Matter of fact, I went to a showroom the other day just to look at cars.
I told you to stop there.
Just to look.
And I come out, yes, just to look. And do you know what I come out with? 2 suitcases.
Oh.
I bought 2 suitcases.
He's got to...
Because they have accessories and things related to cars.
What brand was this?
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Well, it was the top.
Rolls Royce.
The top end. But anyway, but I come out with these 2 suitcases. And the thing is, I'm always worried, and everybody I know who wants to change the car is worried about, do I get electric? Do I get hybrid? Do I get petrol? Do I get diesel? The International Energy Agency stepped in now. What are they saying?
Well, it's all very confused, really. I think at the moment the UK is going to introduce a ban on petrol and diesel sales of new cars from 2030. The International Energy Agency is saying that there should be a global end to the sale of all new petrol and diesel cars by 2035. Now, that's a huge demand to make, particularly in countries where very, very few people have electric vehicles. There's been recent news that fuelling an electric vehicle is actually costing more at the moment than fueling your car with petrol and diesel because of the high energy costs at the moment. So it does seem that while these demands may be there for a reason in terms of trying to tackle climate change and bring down emissions, I'm not sure that governments should ban the sale of petrol and diesel cars outright.
It's even more complicated than just whether or not you can get an electric car, because there's also a question of how many charging points there are. That has to run in parallel with the rollout of electric cars, and you've got to make sure there's enough electricity.
Exactly.
Because the electricity demand will increase dramatically.
Norman, the amount of people I know that say they're frightened to drive their electric car. Why are you frightened to drive your electric car? Well, I'm going to Bristol or Devon, I'm wherever, Glasgow, wherever I'm going, and I don't know if I'll make it. I don't know if there are enough points along the way. I'm scared stiff that I won't be able to get a charging point and whatever. So it is a state of flux.
Yeah, the infrastructure just isn't there at the moment. And the problem is that electric vehicles can be hugely expensive, particularly vans, taxis. There was a story about how ice cream vans are being forced to go electric, and some of those can cost up to £130,000 or something ridiculous like that. So it seems like while these ambitions sound great and noble and they could contribute to helping us with our climate change concerns, it does seem perhaps that the technology just isn't there.
Can I make a comment just on emissions and linking it back to yesterday? I was on my bicycle, went to see the funeral cortege leaving the city.
On your bicycle?
I was lucky enough, both my children and my husband cycled down to the Fuller's Brewery, anyone who knows London, and on the way back the roads were still closed. And Chiswick Bridge, which is a main artery, if you don't live in London, it's a main artery route from the M3 into the capital, especially with Hammersmith Bridge closed at the moment, was 9, 10, 12 bikes abreast. It was incredible. And I thought to myself, can you imagine if London was only, it was like Amsterdam or something? Obviously, it's never going to happen. Lots of people need their cars and vehicles, whatever. But it was an amazing moment. Honestly, it was an amazing moment that hasn't been covered anywhere, really, in the papers. But everyone was on their bikes.
Well, you say it never happened, but if you go back to Amsterdam in the 1970s, Amsterdam was chock-a-block with cars and massive traffic jams.
Really?
And it was deliberate policy by the Dutch government and the Amsterdam authorities to change that. And I remember when I was Transport Minister going to Leiden in Holland to look at their bikes. The railway station at Holland in Leiden had 13,000 bike spaces at the station and 4, I think, for disabled car drivers. 4 spaces only.
But you will know this because you used to live or spend a lot of time in Amsterdam. We'll not go into why. But there still are. There are a lot of cars. There are a lot of cars.
Yes, but you have to live in the city for 3 years
Yes.
before you can even apply to the council to get a car, and you have to park it out of town in the week unless you're parking it for a good reason. There have actually in recent years been an explosion of Ubers, which I think is a shame, and a lot of people using those instead.
I don't think our city is made for...
It's getting better.
Cycling. I mean...
It's not made for cars either.
Well, now it's not, because you have cycle lanes slapped, in main roads where there are a few bicycles going down every hour, and then all the cars are in traffic polluting unnecessarily.
Which demonstrates that electric cars aren't the answer to congestion.
No.
They might help they might help climate change, but the same problem with congestion.
Too many cars.
The answer, actually, frankly, is public transport. That's what you need to get. You need to get really good public transport.
But to do that, you've got to price cars out of the market or reduce them in some way, which would be incredibly unpopular.
Well, if you look at what happens in places like Brighton or Nottingham or Oxford, what's happened there is that you've actually had a quite high car parking charge. You've got priority for buses and so on in bus lanes, and actually it works rather well. Brighton works rather well in transport terms. And the other thing is, economically, they prosper, these cities. Nottingham has got workplace charging, where employers actually have to pay if they get more than 10 parking spaces for their employees. And Boots in Nottingham said, this is terrible, this is going to destroy the city. Nottingham's doing very well economically. So places that have promoted public transport have actually done really well.
I'm sure some people are screaming at the telly saying that electric vehicles aren't that good for the environment, considering how their batteries are managed.
That's true as well, Emily.
There's no fix-all cure, I would argue, and I think a little bit of everything. There you go. There's classic me trying to create the peace. A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Just how does that weekend policy work? The fact that in Amsterdam, that you say, right, you can use your car during the week, that's fine, but at the weekend you've got to go and park it 10 miles
No. I think
away.
they always have to be parked out of town, but you do get a few parked in. I don't know what the rules are.
How do you get back home?
Well, people would cycle. Well, you'd cycle to the car park out of town. Everyone's got a bike. Literally, it is inbred into all Dutch people from the tiniest age up to the... You see grannies, you see pregnant women on the phone with an umbrella, with high heels, I don't know how, steering their bicycles over the little bridges. It is phenomenal. It's incredible.
There's no way I'm doing my commute on a bike.
What's your commute?
Terrifying. Well, I'd be coming from North London.
Terrifying. Let's talk about Taiwan.
Yes.
And the US are saying, right, you know, if the Chinese get rough with Taiwan, we would defend it. We would use our Air Force, for instance, initially, to defend Taiwan.
Yes,
Big statement.
It seems to me President Biden has gone further than previous administrations in the US who've been rather ambiguous about Taiwan and saying that he would defend Taiwan from a Chinese attack with a military response. When he was asked if he would send forces to defend Taiwan, he said yes, which is pretty unequivocal. You know, maybe this is deterrent policy. We're saying to China, don't try it on. Like we've had deterrent policies in the past with nuclear weapons, maybe that's what it is. But he seems to be very fixated on this. The danger is that China has got a long-term ambition to retake Taiwan. It won't change that.
Yeah.
It's inbred in the Chinese psychology of government. In the way that they take over Manchuria, they took over Tibet, you know, which was an independent country, and they're going to try and get Taiwan at some point. So at some point, I fear there's going to be a standoff between these two countries.
OK.
Well, I do want... Oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, just we're short of time.
Oh, no worries.
Let's hold that thought.
I'll hold my horses.
Hold your horses.
Hold your electric car.
And be back in 40 minutes' time.
Yes.
We say goodbye to Norman and Emily. We'll say hello to them again at about 25 to 9. Let's bring you up to date. Here's what's happening news-wise.
The Prime Minister says negotiations for a post-Brexit free trade deal with the US will not restart for years. The Prime Minister made the admission as she flew to New York to speak at the United Nations General Assembly ahead of a meeting with the US President Joe Biden.
Many people with disabilities will receive a one-off payment of £150 from today to help pay for their care mobility needs. The government says around 6 million will be given the one-off cash boost.
The European Court of Human Rights will rule later on whether the parents of Madeleine McCann were wronged by the Portuguese court system. Kate and Jerry McCann say they were unable to get a fair hearing against a former police detective who alleged in a book that they were involved in their daughter's disappearance in 2007.
We're now going to talk about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex at the wedding yesterday, and we were talking about it earlier. We're going to talk with our American commentator, Kinsey Schofield, who's with us now. But first of all, Isabel is going to see what you are saying about this.
Oh, it's got everyone talking, because I was trying to believe that maybe she'll bite her lip from now on.
And my point was, as soon as the funeral was over and she got into that Rolls-Royce with Harry and it drove away, her first words were going to be, well... And it was going to start from then, as any normal couple would do. What
well,
was
Sue
I
Ashcombe-Hurt, she says, sorry, Isabel, I'm with Eamonn on this one. I worked with women who suffered domestic abuse for almost 12 years, and I see Meghan as an abuser. The next one, this one's from, it doesn't have a name, Baz in Cardiff. Eamonn is spot on. Fairy tales are only in books, and that's not Harry and Meghan's genre at all. Robert Roby says, shame, the bloke could have sung the national anthem. I didn't spot this. Did Prince Harry not sing the national anthem yesterday? God save the king. Couple of emails saying that. Keith Hewitt also saying, I'd like to ask Eamonn, so you know, why Prince Harry didn't sing the national anthem. And finally, Olwyn Scattergood has said, watch out, Isabel. I have to say, Meghan Markle, those were crocodile tears. Ooh.
Well, my point is, it would be easier for her than anyone else to go and cue The tears.
Oh, stop
I mean,
it.
no, I don't wish to be... There are those who would say, not me, there are those who would say that as a trained actress, she's taught to cry and, you know, evokes...
Great granny to her children.
But there is an interview where Meghan says, "I can cry out of one eye on cue."
You're joking.
That exists. It was, I think it was either Maxim or GQ, but it's a video interview where she says, "Oh yeah, I can just cry out of one eye whenever I want to." I'm not saying that that's what happened. I just wanted to. That's a fact. That fact exists.
Okay. All right then. That's depressing. So listen, Kinsey.
Was it her left eye? Because that's what was watering in that picture there. But she looked magnificent. She looked gorgeous,
stunning,
graceful.
Yeah. Yes.
With there, yeah.
So what are your overall sort of takeaways? Because obviously you're going to go to the States now, back to LA, where of course they'll be flying back to be reunited with their children. Probably not. They'll be in a private jet. You know, do you think that they'll have healed any rifts?
I do think they behaved themselves over this process, but we know that Meghan's got a Variety magazine coming out. We don't know what she said in that interview. She has said things that were harmful towards the royal family in previous interviews, like the Cut magazine. So I think that we have to wait and see when it comes to Harry and Meghan. Things are already in the process. They've in the background working.
Look, here's my view. I mean, what do I know? I know nothing. But I would theorise about this, and I would say this has given her 5 days, 6 days of huge material, both promotional material and stuff for which to attack the royal family, because she's going to sit there and say, well, I was placed in this seat, I was placed in this row, I was, you know,
we weren't
not
invited
treated...
to the reception at Buckingham Palace on the Sunday
and
night.
there will be a reason, and the reason will always come back to, well, it must have been my race, it must have been my colour, why I was excluded from this.
But I think mainstream general public realize that it's probably because they can't keep their mouths shut that they're excluded. I think that that's common sense. They talk too much, and the British royal family, they're in a fragile position right now, and they need to protect themselves. And I think that that's what they're doing by distancing themselves.
And you can see that etched all over Prince William's face. The Prince
I'll tell you
of
what
Wales.
I could also see that he wanted to be there, that he was born into that. We've seen enough of her, right? Right. So basically, when he was in the church and he was singing and he was there in his uniform, whatever, surely he's saying, this is what I was born for, not to live in, where does he live? Monte Cristo or something?
Montecito.
Monte Cristo.
He's the Count of Monte Cristo.
Well, I think that Prince Harry did look sad throughout the process, but the stark contrast to Prince William, who was so proud of his family, so proud of the tradition, and really so proud of his children.
Oh, beautiful.
Watching the Prince and Princess of Wales engage with their children was one of the highlights of my day yesterday. Those children are so strong. You can tell they have compassionate hearts like their grandmother and Princess Diana. And I just think that they're the future, and I think the future is bright with the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Kinsey, you tweeted a picture that I hadn't actually seen anywhere else, and that was the Princess of Wales comforting her daughter, Princess Charlotte. Were there tears shed, or was it a kind of moment of getting something out of her eye? But it looked like a moment I had missed.
Yeah, I don't think that we actually saw tears, although I saw that circulating online. It did seem just like a sad moment where she was loving on her daughter, and it was like the perfect caption. But I think it reflected all of our hearts yesterday. I mean, yesterday was beautiful. You should be so proud of your country. I was proud to be here to experience that. And I think that it was the perfect reflection of yesterday. We were all aching for the family, aching for, the Queen, but there was comfort in each other.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
Can I ask you about President Biden?
Okay.
Did you spot him during the funeral? I mean, were you going, hang on a minute, where's my leader in all
No,
this?
I did not, and I could not believe that McCann had the audacity to go on Twitter and complain about his position. It's not his time. This is a Commonwealth should be prioritized at this place, this point in time.
Who's Meghan McCain?
John McCain's daughter, who is a TV personality. Right. And she was complaining on Twitter that we did not have VIP access to the Queen's funeral, and I just don't think that that's really our place. I mean, it was a privilege to be invited. To only 2,000 people were allowed in this building, and that we should be grateful that we had a presence at all.
I think he should be one of the most important of the 2,000 people there. I do think it was a terrible oversight, and I hope somebody in the Foreign Office is in trouble for positioning him on the 14th row.
Oh, I'm so
good for that special relationship.
I think that we do have a special relationship, but I just feel like the Queen wanted to prioritise, the people that mean the most to her in this instance, and it was a crazy seating chart. We saw Harry and Meghan behind Prince Charles, and then we saw Prince William all the way on
King Charles, please.
I'm sorry. It's going to become a drinking game.
Yeah.
And so
I think Isabel's right. I just think, he's the President of the United States of America.
It's just
he deserves more prominence, but.
Wow, I feel like an outsider for the first time on this program.
Oh, Kinsey, I'm sorry.
But then there's this other story doing the rounds that his driver got lost or took too long to get there and they gave his seat away, which I don't believe either.
Oh, wow, that would be very interesting.
Yeah. But listen, we've got to say goodbye to you. Your little seat. So you're travelling away today. We really appreciate you flying into the country and away.
Yes.
And I didn't realise your whole Scottish ancestry. Your tribute to Scotland.
Kinsey, will you be back for the coronation? Tell us.
You best believe it.
That hopefully, I believe, although it hasn't been confirmed, that's going to be next year.
Summertime,
we don't know, but
I
maybe
heard.
next year.
Yes, and I will be able to say King Charles without hesitation.
Good stuff.
Thank
Pleasure.
you very much.
Thank you. I love you both.
Kinsey, we'll see you soon.
We'll see you from Monte Cristo.
Okay.
Okay. We'll take a break there. After that, obviously, more reflections from you guys at home. The Queen's funeral, after she was laid to rest in Windsor. All to come.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
The Queen is buried in Windsor, surrounded by her family after a funeral ceremony unparalleled in living memory.
Hello, very good morning to you. The time just after 8 o'clock, Tuesday, the 20th of September. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with me, Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel, Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Queen has been laid to rest next to her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, at St George's Chapel in Windsor, in a private ceremony surrounded by her family.
It followed a huge funeral ceremony at Westminster Abbey and a military parade through London, commemorating the life of the Queen and her service, bringing an end to the Elizabethan age.
In other news this morning, the Prime Minister has flown to New York in her first foreign trip to address the United Nations General Assembly. She'll make Ukraine the focus of her speech and will also hold talks with President Biden during her time there.
6 million people will today receive a £150 disability cost of living payment. It will be made automatically and is intended to offset the high cost of care and transport faced by people with disabilities.
Keep your thoughts coming in this morning. As always, we love you to be part of the conversation. You know the usual ways to do that via email or by Twitter.
So the Queen has been laid to rest alongside her husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. This was a private service inside St George's Chapel, away from the TV cameras yesterday.
Well, GB News' Cameron Walker looks back at the historic state funeral for the Queen yesterday.
An event planned for decades, but military precision all came down to this moment. A final farewell to a Queen who reigned over us for more than 70 years. Her Majesty's coffin was taken in procession from Westminster Hall, where thousands had filed past to pay their respects, in the State's gun carriage of the Royal Navy, pulled by 142 Royal Naval ratings. A tradition dating back to the time of Queen Victoria. At the King's request, the wreath on top of the coffin contained flowers from the gardens of Buckingham Palace, Clarence House and Highgrove, rosemary for remembrance, and myrtle, the ancient symbol of a happy marriage, used in the Queen's own wedding bouquet in 1947. A handwritten note from the King read, "In loving and devoted memory," signed Charles R. A life of service was accompanied by a life in the public eye. Members of the royal family, their dignity and stoicism shone through in the face of unimaginable grief. Princess Charlotte's choice of brooch in the shape of a horseshoe was gifted by her great-grandmother, the Queen. She, alongside her future king brother George, processed behind the coffin with their parents, the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Her late Majesty famously declared on a 21st birthday broadcast that her whole life would be dedicated to serving the nation and Commonwealth. Rarely has such a promise been so well kept.
The Queen was consulted on all of the funeral plans. The hymn you're hearing was played at the Queen's wedding to Prince Philip in 1947. Mounties of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police led the procession from Westminster Abbey to Wellington Arch. Crowds shared in the King's grief, witnessing him and members of his family march behind his mother's coffin. A state hearse brought the Queen's coffin for the committal service at Windsor Castle. More than 800 people, including the Queen's personal staff, filled St George's Chapel. In stark contrast to Prince Philip's funeral, where just 30 people could attend because of COVID restrictions. The imperial state crown, the orb and the sceptre were removed from the coffin and placed on the high altar. The King then placed the Queen's camp colour of the Grenadier Guards on the coffin. The wand broken, creating the symmetry with the three instruments of state being removed, ready to be passed on to their successor.
But the merciful goodness of the Lord endureth for ever and ever upon them that fear him.
The Queen was buried with her late husband, Prince Philip, in a private service. Royal mourning continues, grieving together as a family. Cameron Walker, GB News.
And Cameron now joins us in studio for more. Very emotive, Cameron, to watch and listen to the Piper go off to the distance. But there was that bit, I felt slightly cheated that I didn't see the Queen's coffin when it was being lowered, and the next minute after the Piper it was gone. Obviously, they wanted to keep that very private, and they felt that general public shouldn't see that. But like everybody else, we all thought we had a ringside seat.
Yeah.
And it wasn't to be.
No, apparently not. It was a day of history, and I think the similar thing happened with the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral in April 2021. We didn't see the full lowering of the coffin into the royal vault. Although it's very much a public moment, of course, we've lost our monarch, our head of state, it was still a family grieving. So I think they wanted to be tasteful and wanted to respect their,
their wishes on that.
Yeah.
That family are still in mourning. The rest of us are back to business, back to everyday life. What are the rules now?
Yeah, well, it's another 7 days of royal mourning. Flags above royal residences will remain at half-mast until 8 o'clock, 7 days after the funeral, so another week or so to go. I don't expect we'll see any engagements from members of the royal family over this time. They've had to grieve in public, haven't they, for the last 10 days? So I think this week will very much be a reflection for them to grieve in private as a family.
Gosh, so needed,
because they
isn't
have
it?
they have to do the ordinary things any of us would have to do, like go through Her Majesty's belongings and things, And somebody has to do that, and if they're all working, who does that? I mean, you want it to be somebody personal.
Well, the thing that really got me yesterday was seeing the Queen's two corgis, Mick and Sandy, appear at Windsor Castle.
On the back of the mirror. Let me find the mirror, because they did a wonderful picture of one of them.
It was really beautiful, and they were gifts from the Duke of York following Duke of Edinburgh's death in 2021, and we believe, well, we know that the two dogs are going to go back to the Duke of York and Sarah, Duchess of York.
Can we talk about the pictures that were released yesterday by the royal family on their Instagram? A picture from 1971 of Her Majesty on the hillside in the Cairngorms. You can see the River Dee in the background. Interesting choice from them with that quote from Hamlet. Why do you think they picked that picture to release yesterday?
Well, Balmoral was the Queen's favourite place. It was a place where she could truly relax and be herself. It's a place where she felt that she was in tranquility there. She could kind of put her royal duties to one side and simply be a country woman with walks and hunting and shooting and everything else that goes with it, with the dogs. And I think seeing her in the countryside with her kind of headscarf on was that image, I think, was a lot of us kind of associate with the Queen at her happiest.
OK. Cameron, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Now, Vanity Fair's royal editor and the author Katie Nicholl joins us in the studio. A very good morning to you. You have been absolutely flat out, like so many people, and we're very thrilled to have you in with us today, not least because your new book is out today, entitled The New Royals. What can we expect from this?
Well, you can expect, I think, a beautiful tribute, first and foremost, to Queen Elizabeth's reign, because it is Queen Elizabeth's legacy and the future of the crown. So I suppose it's a very topical book. Just picking up on what Cameron was saying about that beautiful image that the palace released, I think the start of chapter 12 in my book is the Queen's wish is to die at Balmoral. And of course, that is where she died. And I think, there's a lot of insight from people who knew her, people who worked with her over the years. And it's, it is also a look forward, because this has been the most bizarre period of our history, these 11 days of mourning, this great sense of loss that we feel, whether you're a monarchist or not. This was a woman who devoted her life to duty and is the only monarch any of us have known. But coupled with that sense of loss has also been a sense of celebration that it continues, that there will be a new reign in Charles III. So it is also a look forward to the future and what next for the monarchy.
But you've subtitled your book Queen Elizabeth's Legacy and the Future of the Crown. Elaborate on that, please.
Well, exactly as it is. I mean, this is, I think, a nostalgic look back at this remarkable reign. But the focus is moving it forward now. That will become our focus. As we say, we have 7 more days of official royal mourning. And after that, we'll be looking to see what are the first things that the King is going to do in his reign. I mean, I don't think Charles is going to have a personality transplant. He's going to continue with the issues and the causes that he's been passionate about and that he's championed as Prince of Wales. But he's going to do it in a different capacity, as we saw at yesterday's funeral, and that very high profile that the Waleses now take. That's William, the new Prince of Wales, Catherine, Princess of Wales, and their children. It's all change for them. I think the success of the royal family has always been its ability to sort of be ahead of the curve, but never too far ahead, to gauge public mood, to know what to do next. And now that all lies in Charles's hands. It's a big burden.
Well,
huge responsibility.
It
It's
is.
a big burden, but you can see the support he's got. You can see how up to the job William would be, how Catherine would be,
Little
and
George
even,
there.
dare I say it, the grandchildren.
Absolutely,
Yes.
there they are.
Who, I mean, that little boy there, you can see responsibility on his shoulders, and she, what's her name?
Charlotte.
Charlotte, is a mini Queen Elizabeth. I think she looks like Queen Elizabeth. I mean, it's as if she's born, well, she has
Telling
been
her
born
brother
to
to
do
bow
that.
as well, God bless her.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the Queen made sure that with the heir and the spare, that if it was to fall to Charlotte, she wouldn't be overlooked for Louis. She would become Queen if, God forbid, anything happened to George. And so, you know, you see actually just in Charlotte and the significance of her being there, what the Queen did while she was alive, what she did for women. But yes, I think it was a very powerful image to have George and Charlotte there. And I know that William and Catherine will have thought about that very carefully. I mean, we all do, right? You don't think... You think carefully about taking a child to a funeral.
Agonised.
To take these children, who they very much shielded from the public spotlight, and put them right there, would not have been a decision that they'd made lightly. But they knew it was a powerful image to send about the future of the crown.
I thought the children would do a little walk behind the coffin in the funeral procession. Thought that'd be fine, or they would be part of one of the ceremonies. To be involved in that day for both of the ceremonies, incredible. And honestly, people were looking and saying, I mean, the admiration for the stoicism of the royal family, because that went on from 11 o'clock in the morning.
Did they have lunch? Seriously,
someone asked me that. Did they even just stop? I mean, I think this is where that sort of royal training comes into practice.
You can't train what, toilet training as well?
Well,
no, I'm trying to say, and everybody I know said they haven't had a break from 10:30, 11 o'clock or so this morning.
They have they have a remarkable stamina and a remarkable ability to keep going. I mean, I remember being with them, as she then was, the Duchess of Cambridge. We were travelling around Australia and New Zealand. And I thought, none of us have eaten. We've been on the go for about 8 or 9 hours here. And as her door opened for her, I noticed a little stack of Nutri-Grain bars. And, you know, they will grab something on the go. They're not going to stop and have a proper lunch.
Still go to the loo situation, and I'm being serious about it. Every woman I knew said, I couldn't hold on that long.
I'm sure they found a moment.
Yes, of course. Listen, comfort break, it's all worked into the schedule. But you know, it was remarkable stamina. Not just yesterday. Look at the past week or so. It has been an extraordinary period, and very little time for private mourning. I mean, the next morning after the Queen's death, the new king was on a flight and travelling around the United Kingdom.
And I notice you're still dressed in black today in honour of that. But I just want to draw on a picture that was released by the royal family yesterday of the 5 that Her Majesty had been buried with, including her husband and her parents and her late sister. And you have a story in your book about Prince Philip and where he's been laid to rest.
And I can talk about it now because the book is out on ebook today. But no, it was very interesting that when the Duke of Edinburgh was interred, it was into the royal vault below St George's Chapel. But where the Queen was buried yesterday was the King George VI Memorial Chapel, which is a smaller chapel within St George's, which is where her father and her mother and the ashes of her sister are buried. And they actually moved both coffins so that the Duke, the late Duke, and the late Queen were interred together. And what was so touching about that was that the Queen deliberately gave that instruction for her aides that Philip shouldn't be moved, because she knew that she wouldn't be long after.
Oh, it's just so lovely and so moving. A final thought, I just want to get your reflections. We've just heard the breaking news in the last few moments. The Department of Culture and Media and Sport have said just over 250,000 members of public filed past Her Majesty's coffin in Westminster Hall for the lying in state. What do you make of that number? Round about where you thought it would be?
Possibly a little under what I thought it might be. Given...
Have we definitely confirmed that number? I just heard people tossing numbers about...
That was the Culture Secretary this morning.
Over 200.
Given that cue, the line, which had become a sort of entity in its own right in all of this, and I went down there, I met so many people there. It did look like more people. But you know, if that's the figure, that's the figure. I think there would have been more had the Queen lay in state for longer.
I just want to know, does that include
through.
Holly and Philip, or were they counted on the VIP line? Are they in that? Is the VIP line included?
I think everyone is included in those numbers. Everyone is included in those numbers. But no, I thought actually it would probably be more. But you know, when you look at the crowds, particularly on the Long Walk yesterday, I mean, I've done royal weddings there. Of course, the late Duke's funeral, which was completely different because it was in COVID times. I've never seen the Long Walk look like that. I mean, the people that turned out, it was extraordinary. Every day I've been broadcasting down at Buckingham Palace, as have you, and you've seen those people. And I think this is a time where, whatever number it may be, the one thing that is certain is that the Queen brought people together in life. We saw that at her Jubilees, at her birthday parades, and she brought people together in her death. I mean, she has united the kingdom.
Absolutely, and people wanted to do it. They wanted to do it. Just final word, Cameron, anything you want to say just overall?
Well, it was quite a moment. It is the Culture Secretary, Michelle Donlan. I've got it on the Press Association saying that 250,000 people, 250,000 people, paid their last respects to the Queen at her coffin. OK, Cameron Walker, who's our royal reporter, Katie Nicholl, the royal reporters to end all royal reporters, Vanity Fair royal editor and author. Her book, The New Royals, is out today. Is that an e-book?
It's out on eBay. It was the soonest we could get it out, but it will be published in hardback on the 4th of October.
So no rest for you then,
no
in the wake of all of this. Thank you, Katie.
You very much.
Thank you.
Now we're going to speak to Odette Mould. Odette, friend of the programme, honorary friend of the programme, GB News People's Champion earlier this month. And Odette, there you were, invited to the funeral because you're a GB News People's Champion. Congratulations to you.
No.
Well, why was she there?
She was there, as we said, because she was on the Queen's birthday honours. Odette, welcome to the programme again. What was it like?
Incredible experience, overwhelming, really powerful as well. I thought, to be honest, I'd be a bit more emotional inside the Abbey, but it just felt, I just felt a feeling of, I can't really explain it. I still feel like I'm lost for words today. It was just incredible, and certain poignant moments, you know. I honestly didn't think I'd see any of the procession. I was lucky to be invited, humbled to be invited, because I was on the Queen's birthday honours list this year. But I actually did see quite a lot. With the whole procession went past us, we could hear them arriving from, I was sitting inside the Abbey from about 8:30 in the morning. And I could hear, you know, we could hear the drums, we could hear them approaching. It was just, it was just the goosebumps. My hairs were standing on end for the pretty much the whole service.
Well, when I was thinking about you yesterday, and I thought to myself, what do these situations do for you? Because you got your MBE, because you founded a bereavement charity, a charity to look after youngsters who have lost parents. And you must have thought about all of that. That must weigh heavily on your shoulders at an event like this.
It felt very poignant because, of course, the royal family are bereaved themselves, were bereaved many, many years ago, Prince William and Prince Harry. And I've always felt a connection there in terms of what we do. It's so relevant. And there are so many children who are bereaved of a parent or a sibling in our country. I think people think it's quite rare, but we see that in front of us with the royal family. And it felt really relevant and poignant that I was sitting there and that I was invited, and very humbled and very proud. I, again, was in a state of shock when I received the phone call and the invitation, and spent the whole week questioning whether it was real. I honestly did.
It's real, Odette, and it personifies what the Queen was all about. I mean, you're there to serve, you're there to think of others, serve others, which is what Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth was all about. She took that vow to serve the country, and she didn't let anyone down. So it makes sense why thank goodness, we've got people like you in the country.
Yeah, I met some lovely people as well who had also been invited for similar reasons. And you're right, you know, a lot of us were sitting there yesterday, really proud to have been invited. And like you say, the Queen, she's an icon. she served her country till the very, very end. And it does, you know, I was sitting there, like little me, thinking, you know, she's teaching everybody that this is the right thing to do, to continue to serve in whatever we have chosen to do. So my path had led me to support bereaved children. It's making me feel quite emotional now, because I sat there and thought, this is, you know, the Queen, you know, she's teaching us the right thing to do, I believe.
Yeah, and those moments in the funeral that moved both of us, for you it was the last post, for me it was hearing the bagpipes. Were you thinking about your own loss? Were you thinking about Harry, about his siblings, and drawing on those thoughts of how you carry on in the way you described Her Majesty doing?
Well, typically, if I've attended a funeral since attending that of my son, Harry, I struggle a lot. But as I say, when I was in Westminster Abbey yesterday, something else, it felt about something else, so much bigger than that. But when the bagpipes rang out, which was Sleep Dearie Sleep, that was the moment when I was getting upset. And I did spend some of the time reflecting on my own bereavement and my son who had died, particularly at that moment when the bagpipes went off. Well, it was amazing to hear, really amazing to hear. And also it felt really incredible when everyone sang God Save the King as well.
Yeah, start of a new era.
Is that little Harry's face we can see in the sunshine behind you on the rainbow? Just wanted to take a moment to look at that.
It is.
God love him. Oh, well, a tribute to him, absolutely, a tribute to him and a tribute to Her Majesty. And lovely to draw attention to your charity again, Harry's Rainbow, and fantastic that Buckingham Palace extended that invite to you and you were able to tell us firsthand about that funeral. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Wow. Just wow.
Look, we'll take a break there, and then we've got the details of a new cost of living disability payment. You may be receiving it yourself. Is it enough? It's being paid to 6 million people from today. It's 150 quid. Your verdict on that after the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many this afternoon, but breezy with some drizzly rain in the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. Well, starting off in the southwest, and here any mist and fog patches will clear by lunchtime to leave a dry but often cloudy afternoon, feeling warm in any sunny breaks. It's a similar picture across the southeast, where it will be dry and fine this lunchtime with some bright or sunny breaks developing. In South Wales, once any mist and fog clears this morning, it will be dry through the rest of the day, with temperatures getting into the high teens Celsius. And whilst it will be mostly dry across the Midlands, as we head into the afternoon, there is a chance of some isolated showers. These will be mostly light and many will stay dry. There's also the chance of 1 or 2 showers in the northeast. Here it may perhaps be a little brighter than elsewhere, but there will still be quite a bit of cloud. In the north and west of Scotland, it will be a damp afternoon with some drizzly rain. Elsewhere, it's looking mostly dry but quite cloudy with the odd shower. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, the best of any brightness this afternoon will be towards the southeast with thicker cloud and perhaps a little rain at times in the northwest. So little change through the afternoon with drizzly rain in the northwest, mostly dry but rather cloudy elsewhere. And that is how the weather is shaping up for you this Tuesday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio,
And online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Just looking ahead to 50 minutes from now to 8:45, we're going to hear from the Labour Party about the pivotal week ahead for the cost of living crisis. Liz Truss will prepare to lay out her government's mini budget on Friday.
And at 9:15, celebrity chef Tom Kerridge will be sharing all his top tips for cooking without the faff. Lots of time savers, and you know, time equals money. Absolutely.
I ordered a takeaway last night, and you could see how the prices had gone up really significantly. Made a big difference to the bill. I mean, there were a number of people in the house, but it was interesting. So the idea is, as food becomes less affordable for people, that Tom's going to give you tips on how to use tinned food and whatever without losing any of the nutrition involved in that. So yum yum.
Yeah, and keep your thoughts coming in. We love to hear from you. Should we try and read a couple of views quickly? A few comments on Joe Biden, President Biden. Lee says, I wouldn't worry about where President Biden was sitting. He didn't look like he knew where he was anyway. Paul says he shouldn't even have been invited. He hates the UK and the special relationship has not existed since Obama. David in Newmark says, all this guff about Biden not being at the forefront, stop it. In the one shot of him in the Abbey that I saw, he was yawning. Now, that would have looked good in the front row. Fair enough.
Oh, this is terrible. What's this? Linda says, I normally agree with Eamonn, as you should, about most things, but I definitely don't think President Biden should have been given a more prominent place in Westminster Abbey. OK, Linda, tell me why. He has made his feelings about our great country very clear with all his back of the queue rhetoric. That wasn't him. He didn't say back of the queue.
Who said back of the queue?
Obama said back of the queue.
Oh, no, it was Trump, wasn't it? Or,
no, it was Obama. It was Obama.
Oh, right, OK.
Do you want to put it to the test? Google it. Who said back of the queue? When am I ever wrong?
It was Obama. It was Obama. I'll be honest, I was reading a tweet whilst you read that out and I wasn't focusing on what you were saying. I was trying to find... to find my next bit of content, so don't challenge me.
No, but you see, Linda, I think you're blaming him wrongly there. But he did talk about Brexit and the Northern Ireland protocol, how it would impact on trade deals, which Liz Truss says she's got. He's basically saying, no, you haven't. But they're meeting this week, aren't they? They're meeting today. At the
tomorrow. Bilateral tomorrow.
Yeah.
In New York.
So Linda says, I wouldn't have put him in row 14. I'd have put him further back and let him chew
People,
on
we
that.
need a trade agreement, OK? We've left the European Union. We can't annex the United States, even if you don't like Biden. It's very important.
Thank you, Linda. Very entertaining, though. Today is going to see 6 million people receive a one-off disability payment of 150 quid.
Yes, this comes ahead of a so-called mini-budget this Friday, where the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, will lay out his plans to tackle the cost of living crisis.
Let's go to Anna Riley. She's in Leeds this morning, and she is with Anastasia Tempest. Anastasia, journalist and a writer. So, Anna, as I understand it, Anastasia has cerebral palsy. So what does that mean for her?
Good morning. Yes, I'm with Anastasia this morning. She does have cerebral palsy. She's got an electric wheelchair that she has to charge as well, and that's costing you money, isn't it? And this £150, this one-off payment, what will it do for you, and what are your bills like?
Well, my bill is very expensive. It's over £5,000. It's not really going to do very much, and also it's food. I've managed to get myself on the priority list, but so I don't actually get cut off. It's worth mentioning the priority list because most people don't know about the priority list, so I've managed to get on there, and I've contacted one or two charities to try and support me. I feel slightly embarrassed about that, but we'll see what actually happens, and my circumstances are very difficult, but I do have a very supportive friend who helps me out every now and again if it wasn't for her. And also, what also causes me concern is that I'm not receiving any support from social services. I used to have a PA at one point, but that's not happening. So I'm really struggling in terms of getting things done. I'm having to eat silly things like pasties and sandwiches. We can't live off pasties and sandwiches forever, and I could do with a proper meal really, but without the support it's very difficult. I wish I could get into government because I would try and make some changes, but it's whether what we've got at the moment, the Conservative government, whether they would actually listen or not. And I don't really have a leg to stand on because they don't listen.
So with that then, this £150 one-off payment is part of the whole mini budget that's going to be announced on Friday. Yeah. So if you could speak to the government, if you could speak to the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, Liz Truss.
I'd like to. I was invited to send Downing Street one year. So by all means ask me what I think, and then I'll tell you what I think. We actually need some more money. There are plenty of people who are not in a position to work. So it's very difficult. I don't know where the government got the idea for the £150. I don't know how they came up with the figure or what the background. Maybe it was just a figure plucked out of the air, but we're talking about serious people's lives here. It's a very serious business not having enough money to live off.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Anastasia, and it's difficult what you're going through at the moment. And Anastasia's thoughts really on that £150, maybe that it should be means tested. That's her view, and I'm sure we'll be getting a lot more from viewers throughout the day, won't we, on what they think to this payment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our thanks very much indeed to Anastasia and to you, Anna, and we'll hear more, I suppose, from the government on Friday with that mini budget.
But it's the easy answer for the government, isn't it? Just to say, well, there's the payment and that's it gone. It takes more money to means test because more staff are required to do that.
To do means
but that's
testing.
the fair thing, Anastasia, and Anastasia and Anna there, that you want it tailored to people's needs, but...
Well, I suppose that goes to the energy price cap as well that we're talking about. Everyone can use up to £2,500 worth of energy, and that applies to somebody who's heating their swimming pool and somebody who's struggling to eat or heat. One of the big challenges for the government. Anna, thank you very much indeed for now. Eamonn and I are going to take a quick break. After that, we'll go through the papers this morning with...
We've got Emily Carver and we've got Norman Baker, and they have lots of opinions on lots of things. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 8:37. Time to go through the papers this morning with the former Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker and the Conservative Home columnist Emily Carver. Very warm welcome back to both of you. And I thought we might go through the whole of the papers without mentioning the Queen's funeral. But let's start with that, I think. Emily, in the Times, page 22, before we get to other news. And this is about after the grief, now Britain should turn towards the future. So what is the Times saying we should be doing?
Yes, I only chose this piece just because I thought it was rather nice. Max Hastings has written this piece about how he sees the nation has been in mourning, and rightly so, and there's been a lot of grief. Some people have said it's become a little mawkish, but he says, no, this is justified. This is a once-in-a-generation event that has happened, and as we were talking about earlier, marks the end of the Elizabethan age when so much has changed. But he goes on to talk about how nostalgia can be one of our national weaknesses. We need to recognise that there is lots of good to come, as there was in the past, and this should be a time for a reset in terms of our national psyche and looking to how King Charles can be a fabulous monarch too, and how our country can go from strength to strength.
And Emily, do you believe there's lots of good to come? And if so, from where?
Well, I hope so. I mean, if we do look at those stats we were looking at earlier, about how it was in the 1950s in terms of prosperity. We are leaps and bounds ahead in terms of technology, in terms of living standards. And yes, we face a number of crises at the moment, but we can and we will get through them. Don't you think?
I mean, I have heard a lot of people saying the timing of Her Majesty's passing just before the winter, when we're about to have this huge fuel crisis and cost of living crisis, is just awful for everybody, you know, to lose Her Majesty the Queen now, just as we go into this really difficult time. But I suppose you could flip it and say, you know...
A new beginning.
A new beginning.
I wish I had your positivity.
Well, I have to. I'm only 30 years old. I have to, you know?
Yeah.
I'm afraid you're going to have a lot of debt to pay off.
I know.
A lot of problems.
And
Still paying off my student loan.
Yeah, and the thing that depressed me, Norman, and no one talks about this, is shops. I mean, I had a chance yesterday to see London in an empty form, no people around, and the amount of businesses that had the shutters down, closed up. It wasn't just closed for the day because it was a bank holiday. You could tell eateries closed, whatever. In Belfast recently, 2 weeks ago, I went out to get a Chinese on a Saturday. My favourite Chinese closed for good. Somewhere to have your breakfast the next day, closed for good. Somewhere to have an Indian that night, closed for good. And I think when you're finding takeaways and that sort of fast food restaurant business closing, which is traditionally there through thick and thin. They're like cockroaches, aren't they? You know, they're you can't get rid of them. And I find that really scary because people haven't got the money, or they can't get the staff, or they can't heat their fryers or whatever.
No, well, I mean, that's right. And the high street is suffering not just because of the economic downturn, excuse me, but also because of the general move away from high street shopping. Excuse me. And what we're seeing, I think, is shops disappearing in the high street and not going to come back. In my own town of Lewis, we've got a situation where there are empty shops and never have been before. I mean, Lewis has always been vibrant through thick and thin, and now not half the shops, but a lot of shops at the top end of the high street have closed. So it is happening.
The only thing I would say is that whenever there's a crisis, business models change, new jobs arise.
Innovation.
Innovation comes, people make do, and then they come up with new business ideas that will work. Of course, we've got to remember we had a pandemic where we shut down lots of the economy for long periods of time.
Yeah.
We're facing the consequences, but we will build back better. Oh, God, was that a Tory? That was probably a Tory slogan, wasn't it? Build back better.
Yeah.
I think it was
Boris Johnson.
Somewhere else, but let's
talk about food. We talked about food there, and we talk about this crisis, Norman. We're talking about food waste here, which is not something I'm aware of because I don't really leave stuff on my.
We never throw stuff out of date from the fridge or whatever.
And I was brought up to finish what was on your plate.
Clear your plate.
I mean, that's what you did.
Yeah.
And not to waste food, but I mean, food waste is enormous. And the story in the Guardian here, hidden away at the back of the Guardian, was that EU wastes more food than it imports. Every year. 153 million tonnes of food in the EU are frittered away every year, it says here. Double previous estimates.
What does that actually mean?
It means just like we had mountains of butter, didn't we? Butter mountains, we had olive lakes and all those sorts of things. They're all still happening. And it says here the amount of wheat wasted in the EU alone is equal to roughly half of Ukraine's wheat exports. At a time when we're looking at major problems in the world because Ukraine can't get wheat out, this is all being wasted in the EU. And dare I say here as well, because I was down in Newhaven the other day at some community event called Haven in Cars down there. And what they do is fantastic. They collect, every night at 8 o'clock, they collect from 15 supermarkets in the area the perishables that haven't been sold, the bread and everything else that they can move on. They collect a tonne every day of perishables, a tonne from 15 supermarkets all along the coast.
Another thing, I think that's commendable. I think I always have this moral conscience about, you were talking about, when we were told to clear our plates, it was think of the starving children.
I say it to my children
Africa
all the time,
and India.
Yemen.
And I do think there has to be a moral obligation on countries to look after that. But this is, I spend a lot of my time in Ireland, and when I go to a restaurant or whatever, the difference in a serving in Ireland as opposed to England and London, where I am, is amazing.
More generous or less generous?
Oh my word!
So more American in that sense.
Oh, in Ireland, you get a plate. They don't care really about the quality of the food; they just care about the quantity. So did you enjoy your meal? It was lovely. We got this. It's about
getting
mountains
full.
of food, getting full, and then you come back to England. And my brothers and things would say, "What? You paid what for that? Look at all you're getting." There is a difference in portion control, and I think that we've got to wise up in terms of the size of stuff, because you don't finish your plate, you literally
No, and in America, when I was in New York, I wanted a small portion. You can't get a small portion. You can get a regular or large. That's all you can get, and regular is enormous.
I wonder why there's an obesity
when you get
crisis.
the drink and you get a medium one or whatever, it's a bucket, it's a massive sort of thing.
But there are so many apps now that you can go to Pret and other supermarkets and things and just pick up things for a fraction of the price if they're about to...
Is that right?
Or if they're just left at the end of the day. And it's sort of taken out the shame or stigma about it.
Yes, yeah.
Lots of people of all different backgrounds are using these apps because you can go to... No, I've never used them personally, but I have friends who have, and you just pop along to the restaurant or the supermarket towards the end of the day.
Yes.
And you can pick up a bag of whatever... for a fraction of the price.
What they go under the name of? I mean, do you know what they call low-cost Sainsbury's or...
I can't remember. I'll look up the name of the app.
There's a couple of apps.
It'd be very, very much of use.
Can we keep with the food theme, Emily? Because you've picked the story from the Telegraph, page 26, so well inside. I love that we're really going through the papers today about evolving diets.
Yes, this is in a lot of the papers. It's just one study, but it says that our diets aren't getting any healthier than they were in 1990. This is according to a study of all sorts of different countries. Only in the US have diets become healthier.
Oh, really?
No, sorry, US, China, Vietnam and Iran, but less healthy in Tanzania, Nigeria and Japan. So presumably, as countries become wealthier, they become... more unhealthy, but then when they become richer, even more rich, perhaps they become more healthy again. But it's quite interesting because this spurred a bit of a debate in the green room between me and Norman about whether government interventions help improve our diets or not. So things like sugar taxes or minimum unit pricing or, you know, bans on buy one, get one free, that sort of nanny state intervention, whether they are efficient or even moral?
Well, I think it's a question of, I wouldn't say a question of banning things, it's a question of nudge. The government's always believed in nudge policy, it's a Tory party policy, to nudge people. And taxation is a way of doing that by making what's good for you cheaper, making what's not so good for you more expensive. It cannot be right, for example, that you buy something deeply unhealthy for a very cheap price, but you want to buy fresh fruit and vegetables and you've got to pay through the nose for it. That cannot make sense.
Well, Liz Truss doesn't like any of this stuff.
Yeah, she's about to scrap it all.
She's going to scrap it all.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
Interesting one.
Gold panning.
Yes, I'm glad you come to this one, Eamonn, because this is the remedy for all our ills. For those who are suffering from shortage of cash and energy prices, then the answer apparently is to go for gold panning down in Devon apparently, and the Forest of Dean, the Lake District in Cornwall. And there's an organisation that I never heard of called the British Gold Panning Association, which it says here, it's in Daily Star, so it must be correct, mustn't it, has been blitzed, it says here, blitzed with requests from treasure hunters for lessons on how to strike it lucky. But gold panning is the answer.
I'm not sure.
I mean, go on a GB News school trip.
What a thought.
I've done it.
Have you done gold panning?
Really? Where?
Yeah, in Omagh in the Sperrin Mountains in County Tyrone, County Derry, County Tyrone. It was a story. I was sent on a story because, you know, in 1980 or whatever this was, people were doing it and they were panning for gold, and it was the great big thing. But there are a host of programmes on National Geographic and whenever I'm flicking at night, and it's always gold Alaska, gold panners, whatever. There's always something. There's either something about storing furniture, restoring cars, or panning for gold, or looking for lost treasure somewhere. There's always something.
People like this stuff.
That's all there is.
Did you find any, though, Eamonn? Did you find any gold when you were out there?
I saw those who did find it. Obviously, I didn't find it, but it wouldn't be for me. I think.
Well, maybe the weather forecast here on GB News ought to have kind of indications where you can go.
Where to go?
Well, there's a great film, isn't it? Is it Sierra Madre? Is it Humphrey Bogart?
Yes, Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah. And it's wonderful how people will kill to pan for gold.
Yeah.
It's a good film noir. It's a good black and white film. Very, very good.
But no one's been killed in Devon and Cornwall, as far as I know.
Okay, as far as you know.
Right.
Forest of Dean, you never know.
No.
Guys, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed your company today.
Yeah,
Norman
we did.
Baker and Emily Carver.
Thank you.
Cost of living crisis continues as winter's on its way, as we've just been talking about there. Electricity generators have called for a windfall tax to curb soaring energy prices. And joining us now, Labour MP for Ely North, we say good morning to James Murray. James, it's back to business. It's interesting when, you know, during the morning for the Queen there, all the problems we were talking about, they haven't gone away, have they?
That's right. I mean, we all took a week and a half or so to mourn the Queen, which was absolutely right, and it was a real moment of national unity. I think of people coming together to give thanks for 70 years of Queen Elizabeth II's service and devotion to the country. But as you rightly say, this week Parliament is going to be sitting again. We're going to finally hear some details, we hope, from the Prime Minister and her team about what they're going to do to help people with home energy bills and help businesses and so on. And what we really want to see later this week is an answer to the question of who is going to pay and what are we going to get for it. Because we've been calling on the government since the summer to freeze the energy price cap and to pay for that in part through a windfall tax on the oil and gas giants' excess profits. But what we've seen the government saying is that they are not going to do that. They've ruled that out. Instead, they're going to land the cost of any help on borrowing, which is on future taxpayers, and we believe that's wrong.
Look, I mean, you widely called for this freeze on the energy price cap, which the Conservatives, as you say, under Liz Truss, have said they are going to bring in. But one of the criticisms that I've seen for it is that it allows consumption to continue where there is obviously a problem with supply. It's also not an even playing field. You've got people at the top end who are still, heating their pools or whatever it might be, but with the same price cap as other people who are having to make these choices. $2,500, an awful lot of money for some people. So do you think it is the right way to go? Or, would it be better to do some sort of means testing?
I think that the scale of the increase in the price of home energy forecast for this winter is enormous, and it would affect people right across the board in terms of hitting their pockets, meaning they were unable to keep their homes warm this winter. I think we need to have an intervention which helps people across the board. I think we need something which is quick and effective, which is why we've been calling for a freeze on the energy price cap since the summer, and I think it's the right thing to do. As I say, the question now is who pays, and we've said a windfall tax on oil and gas giants' excess profits is the right thing to do, to ask them first to make a contribution toward the cost of this energy price freeze, rather than going straight for borrowing and taxpayers, as the government seems set to do.
James, it's very interesting. I think whether you're a Conservative supporter or not, most people sort of scratch their head. They want to be loyal to their party, and they think, well, if our leader says that and our party says that, it must be right. But people can't work out why it would be right. I'm saying if you're a loyal Tory, right? I would think very few people would disagree with what you say. And now we've got the energy generators, these electricity companies and gas companies that are coming out now and saying, yeah, even we agree. We're being squeezed by all of this. We think windfall tax is the way to go. So I put it to you, why would the government not be doing what seems to be very obvious to a blind man on a galloping horse?
You'd have to ask them. It's impossible to work out from my point of view why they're...
They obviously go through their economics, and they have this mini budget coming out on Friday, and we all are just led by the nose on these things, and we think, yeah, just tax the big boys who are making all this massive amount of money. Come on, you must have a theory. Why are they doing what they're doing?
Well, I can only think that they're putting, ideology ahead of common sense, because we know that the Treasury's own documents show there's some £170 billion worth of excess profits from the oil and gas giants over the next couple of years. And if that's information which their officials are giving them, to snub that advice, to say they're not going to ask for any contribution from the oil and gas giants' profits, and to land all of the costs on borrowing and taxpayers, I can only assume it's their ideology triumphing over common sense.
There's already a windfall tax being introduced in all of this. They've just said that they're not going to introduce a further one. And I suppose the wider argument about why they aren't doing a bigger windfall tax is because they don't want to deter business. This is a sector that's already taxed disproportionately higher than other sectors, and therefore this would just send business elsewhere.
Well, I think you really need to listen to people in the sector, in the industry, who are saying they support a windfall tax. You know, we've had the boss of BP saying for some time now that he doesn't believe a windfall tax will impact their investment decisions. So I think there is such a broad agreement, it appears, that this is the right thing to do. This is a common sense thing to do. This is the right way to fund urgent help for people over the coming months. It seems to be only the Prime Minister and those around her who are the last people to work this out.
You're listening to James Murray. He's MP for Ealing North, speaking to us from Westminster this morning. And he's basically saying, right, look, this cost of living crisis, this fuel crisis, these energy companies are making massive, indecent amounts of money. Simple answer, tax them. Windfall tax and other windfall taxes, as Isabel was pointing out. The government is saying, no, that is not good economics. Where do you stand on this, guys? Let us know this morning. Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can email us at gbnews. So the question is, do the oil producers and the gas producers pay, or do you pay? At the minute, it's going to be you that pays. James Murray, thank you for your time this morning. Appreciate it. And we'll try and reflect what folk are saying throughout the programme. Yes. We're on air till 9:30.
We've got a few views coming in, not on that specific issue, but lots of you getting in touch about President Biden and Meghan Markle this morning, so I want to reflect a few of those. Baz saying, I'm afraid Biden was probably on the correct row, as Commonwealth leaders should have been ahead of him. Nikki says this funeral was about the Queen, her family and the Commonwealth, those with the VIPs, and it parked the huge egos of those people who've been elected to temporary power and who think they are more important. Pat says, why should he be treated differently? He was a mourner, not there to have a front row seat. I'm sure he realised this. He made his show with all the cars. On Meghan Markle, a couple of those. Eunice says, I have to agree with everything Eamonn has said about Meghan. I feel she was looking for slights all the way through and gleaning ammunition for Oprah or her podcast. She probably has had enough to last another year.
I agree with Heather in Downham Market. Heather says, please stop talking about Meghan. She's not worth it. I think that's the problem. You end up talking, if you praise her, nobody listens. If you say something bad about her, it's in all the headlines. All her creatures are sitting waiting for people to put foots wrong and report you to this organisation and that organisation. So I think she thrives off publicity. She thrives off being a victim and doesn't seem to want to move on at all. So that's difficult. And also funding the war in Ukraine or supporting it, not popular by people who've got in touch with us. Whether it's popular in general, I don't know, but certainly amongst the GB News viewers and listeners, not what you would tend to do.
Right, do stay with us. In the next half hour, we've got celebrity TV chef Tom Kerridge talking to us about some of his delicious, low-cost and, crucially, low-faff recipes. This is about time-saving recipes. That's after this short break and your forecast. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many this afternoon, but breezy with some drizzly rain in the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. Well, starting off in the southwest, and here any mist and fog patches will clear by lunchtime to leave a dry but often cloudy afternoon, feeling warm in any sunny breaks. It's a similar picture across the southeast, where it will be dry and fine this lunchtime with some bright or sunny breaks developing. In South Wales, once any mist and fog clears this morning, it will be dry through the rest of the day, with temperatures getting into the high teens Celsius. And whilst it will be mostly dry across the Midlands, as we head into the afternoon, there is a chance of some isolated showers. These will be mostly light and many will stay dry. There's also the chance of 1 or 2 showers in the northeast. Here it may perhaps be a little brighter than elsewhere, but there will still be quite a bit of cloud. In the north and west of Scotland, it will be a damp afternoon with some drizzly rain. Elsewhere, it's looking mostly dry but quite cloudy with the odd shower. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, the best of any brightness this afternoon will be towards the southeast with thicker cloud and perhaps a little rain at times in the northwest. So little change through the afternoon with drizzly rain in the northwest, mostly dry but rather cloudy elsewhere. And that is how the weather is shaping up for you this Tuesday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
The Queen is buried in Windsor, surrounded by her family after a funeral ceremony unparalleled in living memory.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's exactly 9 o'clock. It's Tuesday, the 20th of September. Thank you for your company. Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading our news this morning. Her Majesty has been laid to rest next to her husband, the late Duke of Edinburgh, at St George's Chapel in Windsor, in a private ceremony surrounded by her family.
It followed a funeral ceremony at Westminster Abbey and a military parade throughout London commemorating the Queen's life of service and bringing an end to what was the Elizabethan age.
In other news this morning, the Prime Minister has flown to New York in her first foreign trip to address the United Nations General Assembly. She'll make Ukraine the focus of her maiden speech and will also hold talks with President Biden.
6 million people will today receive £150 disability cost of living payment. It will be made automatically and is intended to offset the high cost of care and transport faced by people with disabilities. And thank you for joining in the debate this morning. We've reflected those. Keep on doing it. We're on air until 20 past 6. GB Views
No, we're not.
GB News 26 minutes past 9. That's a sort of numeric dyslexia, isn't it?
Yeah.
26 minutes past 9. And keep doing that so you can tweet at GB News as well.
So our top story this morning, the Queen has been laid to rest alongside her husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, in a private service inside St George's Chapel in Windsor.
Well, GB News' Cameron Walker looks back now at the historic state funeral for the Queen.
An event planned for decades, but military precision all came down to this moment. A final farewell to a queen who reigned over us for more than 70 years. Her Majesty's coffin was taken in procession from Westminster Hall, where thousands had filed past to pay their respects, in the state gun carriage of the Royal Navy, pulled by 142 Royal Naval ratings. A tradition dating back to the time of Queen Victoria. At the King's request, the wreath on top of the coffin contained flowers from the gardens of Buckingham Palace, Clarence House and Highgrove, rosemary for remembrance, and myrtle, the ancient symbol of a happy marriage, used in the Queen's own wedding bouquet in 1947. A handwritten note from the King read, "In loving and devoted memory," signed Charles R. A life of service was accompanied by a life in the public eye. Members of the royal family, their dignity and stoicism shone through in the face of unimaginable grief. Princess Charlotte's choice of brooch in the shape of a horseshoe was gifted by her great-grandmother, the Queen. She, alongside her future king brother George, processed behind the coffin with their parents, the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Her late Majesty famously declared on a 21st birthday broadcast that her whole life would be dedicated to serving the nation and Commonwealth. Rarely has such a promise been so well kept.
The Queen was consulted on all of the funeral plans. The hymn you're hearing was played at the Queen's wedding to Prince Philip in 1947. Mounties of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police led the procession from Westminster Abbey to Wellington Arch. Crowds shared in the King's grief, witnessing him and members of his family march behind his mother's coffin. A state hearse brought the Queen's coffin for the committal service at Windsor Castle. More than 800 people, including the Queen's personal staff, filled St George's Chapel. In stark contrast to Prince Philip's funeral, where just 30 people could attend because of COVID restrictions. The imperial state crown, the orb and the sceptre were removed from the coffin and placed on the high altar. The King then placed the Queen's camp colour of the Grenadier Guards on the coffin. The wand broken, creating the symmetry with the 3 instruments of state being removed, ready to be passed on to their successor.
But the merciful goodness of the Lord endureth for ever and ever upon them that fear him.
The Queen was buried with her late husband, Prince Philip, in a private service. Royal mourning continues, grieving together as a family. Cameron Walker, GB News.
OK, we have some breaking news for you now in relation to Madeleine McCann. News just in that in the last few moments, the European Court of Human Rights has ruled that the parents of Madeleine McCann were not wronged by the Portuguese court system. So they have lost that appeal. Kate and Jerry McCann have issued a libel case against the former policeman Gonçalo Amaral for accusing them of being involved in Madeleine's disappearance in 2007. And they could now be forced to pay huge costs. Let's get some analysis from our Home and Security editor, Mark White. OK, so this is a big deal for the McCanns then. This has been a long-running legal argument and it's gone right to the top now.
They'll be absolutely devastated. This has been 14 years of legal battle with initially this former detective in charge of the initial investigation. He was taken off that case shortly after the disappearance. A 27-year veteran went on then to write a book just a year later. And the controversy ever since has been, the allegations that he's made in the book, claiming that effectively Madeleine McCann's parents lied and covered up the death of their daughter. Now, they say that, of course, is reputationally damaging, that it damages the hunt for their daughter, which is still ongoing, we know. And they initially won that. They took it to court in Portugal. They won that action against this detective. Former detective. Further copies of the book were then suspended. But then he successfully appealed up into higher courts in Portugal, eventually the Supreme Court in Portugal, which ruled against the McCanns and the £436,000 in damages that they were claiming they clearly didn't get. So this is why they have, in recent years, been fighting through the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. And now they have ruled. They had appealed through that article, the right to private or family life, in terms of the reputational damage that has caused the family. But the court says, in its judgment, just released just now, that they don't believe that they were wronged by the Portuguese government, because it's the Portuguese government, because of this decision at the Supreme Court, that they were taking to court.
Right, OK, so it's not about the specific allegations made in the book Truth of a Lie, but about the action of the government. I suppose that's a really important distinction. But what is terrible news for the McCann family, on top, of course, of the disappearance of their daughter, is they now have to pay all of these legal costs.
Yeah, a very significant legal cost. We don't know the exact figure, but it could be many thousands of pounds, because this has been a multi-year process through the European courts. So suggestions that they might have to dip into the Madeleine McCann fund, which is running, according to accounts, at £931,000 at the moment. They may crowdfund. I'm not sure how they would pay for it. They haven't commented yet on this decision, but they will be bitterly disappointed.
Yeah, and so that is terrible news. This 14-year battle then has come to an unsuccessful end for them in Strasbourg, as you say this morning, with the European Court of Human Rights rejecting that appeal against the Portuguese government. Thank you very much.
But can you just put it in simple terms for us? In terms of, here you have a bereaved mother and father who the accusation is made. You have to take some responsibility, or you were responsible for your child disappearing. And how, obviously anybody who was accused of that would sue. And there are people, there are conspiracy theorists out there who have their own opinions about the McCanns. The McCanns have to live with this terrible pain. But I was just wondering if you could just put that in terms, so that people understand what they did and what happened to them as a result in terms of that court case.
Well, why don't I put it in these terms? any active police officer I've ever spoken to in the United Kingdom, not one of them believes that the McCanns were responsible in any way, shape or form for their daughter's disappearance and potential murder, because that's now what it's been treated as.
So I sort of don't understand how they've lost this case.
They lost the case because the initial Portuguese court decision actually went in their favour. As is so often the case with court cases, you can appeal up to a higher court. That has happened in Portugal. This detective has former detective has successfully appealed, Eamonn, that he has the right of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Those are his sincerely held views, and they're put in paper form. And the court in Portugal have agreed with him. The Supreme Court in Portugal agreed with him. The McCanns were then suing the Supreme Court. The European Court of Human Rights have come now with this conclusion many years later to say that actually, they were not wronged by that decision by the Supreme Court. It's difficult to see where on earth the McCanns could go from here other than having to pay now these legal costs. We should say, as far as the investigation is concerned, after all these years, it's still an active investigation. You remember just recently we had German and Portuguese authorities now coming out and saying that this man, this convicted paedophile Christian B, who is serving a sentence for rape in Germany, was a prime suspect. He was around Praia da Luz at the time in 2007 when Madeleine McCann disappeared. They tracked and triangulated mobile phone reception to him making a call just minutes from the time that Madeleine McCann disappeared, and only a mile or two away from the scene where she disappeared. And lots of other evidence as well. He had apparently confessed to someone in a bar that he'd been responsible for the abduction and murder of this young girl.
The human side of all of this. The police in the UK don't believe they had anything to do with their child's disappearance. They have to live with that pain and that loss. And now, on top of all of that,
it's outrageous.
They are hit with £1 million costs and fines.
Awful. What more suffering do they need to endure? Every day they will think about the loss of Maddie.
There are plenty of conspiracy theorists out there, and I have no doubt that in your inbox, in my inbox and Twitter feed, there'll be plenty of people voicing those very stridently held views of what they believe
even
the
if
McCanns
there was an accusation that they were careless or they should have been with their children as opposed to looking at them from afar or whatever. They know that. They don't need to be told that. They have to live with that.
Exactly. I was going to say that. That perhaps is a justified argument. Why on earth was this young girl left in a room hundreds of metres away from where they were actually dining? Was she properly supervised? Clearly not. But you're right, they will have beaten themselves up day in, day out, year after year for that decision that they made, that fateful decision. It doesn't need people, Twitter trolls and the like.
They are just that, they're trolls, and you shouldn't give any more thought, really, to conspiracy theories. Thoughts go out to Kate and Jerry, and one wonders if they'll try and find some other legal avenue in all of this, but it feels as...
I'm not sure where they can go. The European Court of Human Rights, really, I think, is pretty much exhausted.
Oh, OK.
Thanks,
Thank you for that breaking news for us this hour.
Look, it's 9:15. Do you know what? We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we've got the renowned chef, Tom Kerridge, and he's got a book out. And
matches our colour. Look, it's beautiful. Sort of camouflage into our plasma there.
Well, the thing about that is, Isabel, he's trying to say you can go and you can use convenience food. Convenience often means unhealthy. He's saying not necessarily so. Look, he's got maple and soy chicken rice bowl. Give me a few recipes there.
Oh, the one I spotted, I like this one. This is tomato and olive puff pastry tart, which is sprinkled with feta with an olive tapenade base.
So your whole weeknight dinners could change. They could change for the better. They could change for being cheaper, OK? And Tom's going to tell you why right after this weather forecast.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many this afternoon, but breezy with some drizzly rain in the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. Well, starting off in the southwest, and here any mist and fog patches will clear by lunchtime to leave a dry but often cloudy afternoon, feeling warm in any sunny breaks. It's a similar picture across the southeast, where it will be dry and fine this lunchtime with some bright or sunny breaks developing. In South Wales, once any mist and fog clears this morning, it will be dry through the rest of the day, with temperatures getting into the high teens Celsius. And whilst it will be mostly dry across the Midlands, as we head into the afternoon, there is a chance of some isolated showers. These will be mostly light, and many will stay dry. There's also the chance of 1 or 2 showers in the northeast. Here, it may perhaps be a little brighter than elsewhere, but there will still be quite a bit of cloud. In the north and west of Scotland, it will be a damp afternoon with some drizzly rain. Elsewhere, it's looking mostly dry, but quite cloudy with the odd shower. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, the best of any brightness this afternoon will be towards the southeast with thicker cloud and perhaps a little rain at times in the northwest. So little change through the afternoon with drizzly rain in the northwest, mostly dry but rather cloudy elsewhere. And that is how the weather is shaping up for you this Tuesday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Cost of living crisis. Now we're going to get into what you eat and food waste and how you're spending too much when you don't have to. These are real life recipes from the internationally renowned chef Tom Kerridge, and we're going to speak to Tom now live from his pub, The Hand and Flower. Tom, very good to see you, and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you very much, guys. How are you?
Yeah,
we
we're
are
okay.
very well, and we're getting
quite
hungry.
envious. Yeah, we're getting hungry. We sit and look here, and there's so many nice recipes. But basically, you're going to talk about using convenience food, and a lot of people will say, you know, you're talking about you've nothing against tinned food here, nothing against buying processed stuff at the supermarket. It's how you use it, what you add to it, what you can do with it, how you can save money. But Tom, I put this to you: people say convenience or processed, and they think automatically unhealthy.
Yeah, no, I mean, using supermarket product is very, very different to using processed foods. You know, there are things that are in there. I mean, you picked out previously, just before the ad break there, about the tomato and feta tart. Well, the puff pastry there, I mean, we're not making puff pastry at home. It's about using the convenience of having something ready-made. You know, jars of onion jam, things like using fruit compotes for crumbles, frozen berries. I mean, there's a frozen berry crumble in there that you just use the fruit that's already there. And the great thing about using frozen things like frozen berries and frozen vegetables, you know, when we were doing a lot of the work with the Marcus Rashford stuff, the full-time meals campaign that we did, the use of frozen veg, keeping it in your freezer, means that you only take out what you need, which reduces reduces food waste. So the idea of using convenient supermarket product is very different to using processed.
Yes, and you've got some tips as well on flavour boosters, because a lot of the time, you know, people spend more time making things with tons of ingredients because they want to get that essential flavour. But you've found a clever way of getting rid of all the faff, keeping it convenient, but also enhancing those tastes.
Yeah, there's so many different things you can use, tricks and tips. You know, seasonings and spices are really, really good for that. You know, they really do enhance things. But another one is fresh herbs. Fresh herbs make a big, big difference. Put a handful of them in at the end. And honestly, recipes, this is a cookbook that's about... the recipes are guidelines. They're not there as it's not the law. Don't worry, I'm not going to come round and tell you off if you're not following it exactly. You know, swap things out. It doesn't matter. Just have a go at doing stuff. They're all, you know, all the recipes are really quite creative, but quite small. There's not a huge amount of work that goes into it. And most of them are things for things like midweek teas. You know, they're not just that super special weekend stuff.
Tom, are you going to make something for us? Are you going to show us pictures of things that you want to recommend to people?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the pea and ham crouton with croutons, I mean, absolutely delicious. But the soup is beautiful, easy to make using frozen peas, beautiful flavour, keeps for a good 3 or 4 days in the fridge, tastes amazing, using the idea of crispy croutons on the top of it, really, really tasty. There's a vegetable bhaji burgers. Now, these are great to make as well. These are the sort of vegetarian, but also flavour-wise, they're absolutely outstanding. Stick them in a bun, taste delicious. Using that ready-made product, sprinkling with some Bombay spice mix over the top, texture, crunch, flavour, those sort of things are absolutely delicious. And then also the fruit crumble that I mentioned as well, using the frozen fruits, some Granny Smith apples. You know, apples are about to start coming into season, so if you haven't got Granny Smiths, use the proper English apples, eating apples. It doesn't really matter. And really, it's a case of throwing it all in a bowl, sticking the crumble mix on the top, whacking it in the oven. It really is that simple.
Oh, my goodness, I'm salivating at you. I don't know about you. Look, I read in our notes here that you've got a son, AC, that you're happy to talk about and how you introduce your son to new foods. But I put it to you, when you're cooking stuff like you do, Michelin-starred chef, he'll eat anything you produce, I'm sure.
Absolutely no way. That's a complete...
Really?
Oh, listen, it doesn't matter who your dad is. Getting a 6-year-old to eat vegetables is still the hardest thing.
That's so good to hear. That's so good to hear. OK, but you must have some top tips.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we try to get them involved as much cookery as possible. You know, you get involved, understanding where ingredients come from, what they taste like, make sure that he's a part of the process, so that, you know, kids work with a reward system, don't they? If they make something, they get something at the end, and food is the greatest one. You know, if you're creating something, you get to eat it at the end. But also just that trying to get hiding the veg. There's a recipe in the book, actually, it's called Beth's Hide the Veg Bolognese. And basically, we kind of make, my wife Beth makes an amazing bolognese, but using loads and loads of vegetables and like hidden in it, so you can bind it with pasta. So it's a great way of getting vegetables in them. So, but yeah, don't worry. I mean, it doesn't matter who your dad is. I still have the same problems as everyone else.
That's hilarious. That's brilliant.
There's a couple of sides, Tom, to this cost of living crisis. There's, you know, how people cook at home, what sort of money they're spending. But there's also, my friend, what money they've got to spend out and about, and how businesses like yourself, you know, your pub there, for instance, being one of them, actually survive in terms of staffing, in terms of your cooking, your heating bills, in terms of what you can actually charge on a menu and what people are prepared to pay. How would you sum up the pub business, the gastro pub business?
Yeah, well, I think the whole of hospitality is facing a very, very difficult point at the minute. I mean, there's lots of talk about 7 out of 10 pubs are not going to survive unless the government do something quite rapidly and announce how they're going to help with the cost of energy crisis. If you think there's many small and wonderful pubs dotted up and down the country or in the centre of towns where, you know, the landlord lives upstairs and they may well eke out a bit of a living that, you know, that may make £25,000, £30,000 a year just about, and they live upstairs and everything's kind of taken care of. But if you've got electricity bills that are going doubling, trebling, 3 or 4 times, maybe our first quote for our electricity bill at the pub that I'm sat in right now has gone up at nearly 700%. Obviously, we haven't signed that. You're still looking around. But if all of a sudden those small pubs where the landlord makes just a little bit of a living, and all of a sudden they've got an increase of 50, 60, 70,000 pounds a year, then there's no way those pubs are going to be able to operate. So, we need to look at what that business price cap is. And, unfortunately, the supply chain also has that problem. So the butchers, the fishmongers, the farmers, the veg growers. And when that supply chain comes in, it's inevitable with food inflation, the costs go up. But at the same point, the guest and the consumer at home has less money because of that food inflation and price inflation, that it kind of like pulls everything apart. So, it's going to be a very, very difficult couple of years.
Yeah, well, all eyes on that mini budget on Friday, see what comes out of that. But in your book, it's divided into 4 chapters: lunch, tea, something a bit fancier, and treats. And it's all about recipes that work hard so you don't have to, titled Real Life Recipes. And it came out this month. Tom Kerridge, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Be more of a
Thanks
pleasure.
very much, guys.
Yeah, it'd be more of a pleasure if you had to come in with some food, for goodness sake.
We'll have
but
to
anyway,
go to his pub.
I forgot
There we go.
I've been to his pub.
Of course you have.
Good man, Tom. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good man. Good man.
All the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much
We'll
indeed.
say goodbye to Tom. We say goodbye to you at home. We'll be back bright and early again tomorrow from 6 o'clock.
We hope you will be too. Next up, Tom Harwood with The Briefing. Have yourselves a good day.
Yeah, have a lovely day. Bye-bye. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many this afternoon, but breezy with some drizzly rain in the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. Well, starting off in the southwest, and here any mist and fog patches will clear by lunchtime to leave a dry but often cloudy afternoon, feeling warm in any sunny breaks. It's a similar picture across the southeast, where it will be dry and fine this lunchtime with some bright or sunny breaks developing. In South Wales, once any mist and fog clears this morning, it will be dry through the rest of the day, with temperatures getting into the high teens Celsius. And whilst it will be mostly dry across the Midlands, as we head into the afternoon, there is a chance of some isolated showers. These will be mostly light, and many will stay dry. There's also the chance of 1 or 2 showers in the northeast. Here it may perhaps be a little brighter than elsewhere, but there will still be quite a bit of cloud. In the north and west of Scotland, it will be a damp afternoon with some drizzly rain. Elsewhere, it's looking mostly dry but quite cloudy with the odd shower. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, the best of any brightness this afternoon will be towards the southeast, with thicker cloud and perhaps a little rain at times in the northwest. So little change through the afternoon, with drizzly rain in the northwest, mostly dry but rather cloudy elsewhere. And that is how the weather is shaping up for you this Tuesday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
Helping our